the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Borgin and Burks and the Stone. Hey, aren't we going back? After walking a few steps, Irina realized that they were not walking in the direction they came from, so she asked in confusion. Lin explained, I plan to sell some of the alchemy products I used to practice alchemy. Those garbage piled in my bag also take up space. It's better to exchange them for gold galleons. So Lin took Irina to a larger store. Borgin and Burks. Irina read out the sign at the door of the store. Irina was somewhat familiar with this store. In the original book, Harry misread the address when he took the flu network before school started, and it seemed that he came to the fireplace of this Borgin and Burks. Lin nodded slightly, and he asked Irina to wait for him at the door, and then he walked into Borgin and Burks alone. When he walked into the store, Lin saw the hunched wizard behind the counter. This wizard was Mr. Borgin, the owner of Borgin and Burks. Look at anything you want, but don't touch it. Mr. Borgin glanced at Lin, and after finding that it was a strange little wizard, he said lightly. Lin En shook his head, walked to the counter, and said calmly, I don't buy things, I sell goods. Oh. Mr. Borgin looked at Lin En with interest. He didn't think that this little wizard in the 2nd or 3rd grade could have any good things. This is not a scrap recycling station. I don't accept everything. Hearing this, Lin En sneered and put a semi-finished forbidden magic stone on the counter. Seeing this forbidden magic stone, Mr. Borgin took a step back in surprise and then picked up a magnifying glass to observe the semi-finished forbidden magic stone on the counter. This is forbidden magic stone. But isn't this thing only made by the French alchemist Wallace and Green? Mr. Borgin said in disbelief. Mr. Borgin asked tentatively, how many of these do you have? Lin En put a bag on the counter. Mr. Borgin opened the bag and was horrified to find that there were more than 30 semi-finished forbidden magic stones in it. This made Mr. Borgin feel incredible. You know, in his opinion, only Wallace and Green can refine the forbidden magic stone, and the terrifying power of the forbidden magic stone makes every forbidden magic stone that is not purchased by the Ministry of Magic, but put on the market at extremely high prices. Not to mention the British magic world, even in the French magic world, where Wallace and Green is, a forbidden magic stone can be priced at dozens of gold galleons. But for Lin En, it is just a waste product used to practice when learning magic alchemy. After all, the semi-finished forbidden magic stone does not need to be engraved with alchemy arrays. It is not the product of the combination of magic alchemy and array alchemy, but is only refined by magic alchemy. As long as the raw materials are sufficient, Lin En can refine a steady stream of semi-finished forbidden magic stones. May I ask your name? And what is your relationship with Mr. Green? Mr. Borgin asked cautiously. If it is said that Lin En, who can take out more than 30 forbidden magic stones in one breath, has no relationship with Wallace and Green, Mr. Borgin will never believe it. Lin said calmly, Lin Rowell, and I'm a disciple of Mr. Green. Hearing this, Mr. Borgin suddenly realized that he was the disciple of Wallace and Green. No wonder he could produce so many forbidden magic stones. It seemed that he had already learned how to refine forbidden magic stones. After hearing Lin's last name, Mr. Borgin's attitude became much more respectful. After all, the Rowell family and the Burke family were both members of the Holy 28 Pure Blood family, and the Rowell family was stronger than the Burke family, while the Burke family was relatively weaker. Otherwise, Mr. Borgin would not have fallen to the point of opening a store in Diagon Alley and kowtowed to Lucius Malfoy. Ah, Mr. Rowell, it's an honor to meet you. Mr. Rowell, how are you going to sell these forbidden magic stones? Mr. Borgin seemed to bend his waist a little more, and he said flatteringly. Lin En said calmly, one forbidden magic stone is worth 50 gold galleons. If you want to eat all of this bag, then I'll charge you 2,000 gold galleons for this bag. Hearing this, Mr. Borgin said with some embarrassment, This is not right, Mr. Rowell. According to what you said, one forbidden magic stone is worth 50 gold galleons. The maximum amount of forbidden magic stones in your bag is 1650 gold galleons. Why is it 2000 gold galleons? The more you buy, the more expensive it is. Lin En sneered and said, forbidden magic stones are in short supply in the market now. The more you buy, the more you can make by reselling them. If it weren't for me finding it troublesome, I wouldn't give them all to you. Wouldn't it be nice if I could sell them one by one at the auction house? Mr. Borgin hesitated. As Lin En said, if he resold these forbidden magic stones, he might be able to make more money, especially at the auction house. The value of each forbidden magic stone might double. However, Mr. Borgin wanted to use these forbidden magic stones to strengthen the alchemy array of the store. With the power of forbidden magic, his Borgin and Burke's store might become the safest store in the entire Nocturne Alley, even in all the stores in Diagon Alley. Therefore, Mr. Borgin could only buy these forbidden magic stones out of his own pocket instead of making money from them. And 2000 gold galleons is not a small amount for Mr. Borgin now. After all, he just bought a large number of dark magic products from Malfoy half a year ago. If he swallowed up all of Lin's forbidden magic stones, then his Borgin and Burke's store might not be able to make ends meet this year. Okay, I want it. In the end, Mr. Borgin gritted his teeth and agreed. Gold galleons can be earned at any time, but the opportunity to buy so many forbidden magic stones at one time may only be this once. So, Mr. Borgin counted 2000 gold galleons for Lin, and took away the forbidden magic stones that Lin had placed on the counter. Having made a lot of money, Lin left Borgin and Burke's with satisfaction, holding the hand of Irina who was waiting for him at the door. Let's go, I'll take you to Diagon Alley for a big meal today, Lin said happily. Even without the money from his family, this amount of gold galleons alone was enough for him to spend for a whole school year. Even some alchemical experiments that Lin was reluctant to try due to the high prices of alchemical materials can now be carried out. After returning to Diagon Alley, Lin bought Irina a box of strawberry flavored ice cream at Florin's ice cream shop, and then the two of them went to the place where they were going to eat. Please give me tips and monthly tickets. Chapter 127 Lin En, let's raise it together. After eating and drinking, Lin En and Irina started to stroll in Diagon Alley. At this time, Irina stopped in front of a shop. Ela Owl Shop. Do you want to buy an owl? Lin En read out the name of the shop, and then looked at Irina in confusion. When Lin En first came to Diagon Alley to buy teaching materials, he had seen this shop selling owls, but he didn't think it was necessary to spend money to buy his own owl, so he didn't go in. Irina had the same idea at the time. Irina thought about it and said, I didn't think it was necessary to buy it before, but now I know that I have the ability to be friendly with magical animals, so I want to buy an owl of my own. After all, an owl that can only obey me may be able to play an extra role. Then let's go in and take a look, Lin En said happily. Anyway, they are just out to relax, so it doesn't matter where they go. The two walked into Ela Owl Shop. This Ela Owl Shop is quite large, and there is even a traceless stretching spell inside the shop. It is equivalent to half of the Flower and Bad Market in Lin En's previous life. However, unlike the magical zoo, Ela Owl Shop only sells various species of owls. Is there anything you want? Or I can take you around. Seeing the two people come in, a shopping guide took the initiative to greet them. In such a large-scale store, there are usually shopping guides to guide wizards to buy the goods they want. Suddenly, Irina stopped in front of an owl that was completely white, but the tips of its hair were a little gray. This owl has the beautiful hair of a snowy owl, but its body is as small as a horned owl. There is also a small diamond-shaped gray-black hair above the left eye of this owl. I don't know why, when I saw this little owl, Irina subconsciously thought of the white floating spirit in a game she played in her previous life. This owl. Irina spoke subconsciously. The salesperson looked over and said quickly, after seeing the little owl, sorry, customer, this owl was not properly supervised by the staff in charge of breeding in our store, and a snowy owl was accidentally hybridized with a horned owl. We just put it here temporarily, and we'll take it away in a few days. In the magic world, the so-called bloodline concept of wizards is still quite popular, so wizards will pay attention to the so-called bloodline whether buying pets or in other aspects. It is also because of this that, after seeing the owl in front of Irina, the salesperson mistakenly thought that Irina was dissatisfied with the hybrid creature being sold. Hearing this, Irina was stunned and then explained, "You misunderstood. I wanted to ask, how much does it cost to take this little owl away?" Hearing Irina's words, the salesperson was also stunned. The salesperson did not expect Irina to plan to buy this hybrid owl. "If you want it, you can take it for 15 silver sickles." The salesperson said so. Originally, the price of a purebred owl was at least a dozen gold galleons, but this hybrid owl could not be sold in the store, and it would be a loss if it was disposed of. Now that Irina wanted to buy this owl, the salesperson naturally planned to do a favor and sell it at a low price. As for whether the owner of Ella Owl Shop would agree, the salesperson was not worried. In Ella Owl Shop, hybrid owls had no value, and being able to sell them was already a profit for the store. Irina nodded, counted out 15 silver sickles from her pocket, and handed them to the salesperson. When the salesperson helped Irina put the little owl into the cage, Irina looked at Lin En with a smile on her face, and said in a cheerful tone, "Lin En, let's raise it together." Hearing this, Lin En was a little stunned. "Ah, raise it together?" Irina smiled brightly and said, "Yeah, you don't have an owl either, so let's buy one together and raise it together. We can also use it to send letters together in the future." Seeing Irina's pretty face full of smiles, Lin En was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay, it just so happens that our schedules are different. I can feed it while you are in class." After reducing the number of courses in the 3rd grade, Lin En had a lot of spare time. If nothing else, it would be okay to feed the little owl. Irina nodded happily, and then asked, "That's it. So, what's the name for it?" Lin En looked at the fluffy little owl in the cage that the salesperson handed over, reached into the cage, and touched its head, and said, "You decide." Irina thought about it, and decided to say the name she had thought of before. "Then let's call it emergency food." Hearing Irina's words, Lin En looked at her in surprise. "So you play too?" At this time, the salesperson on the side heard the conversation between the two, and couldn't help saying, "Miss, owls are the best companions of our wizards, not food." Irina said awkwardly, "Ahem, a name. It's just a name." The two left the EI or owl shop with the little owl emergency food they bought for 15 silver sickles, and when they came to the street, Irina opened the cage door and let the emergency food out. The little fluffy ball was obedient. After flying out of the cage, it stayed on Irina's shoulder obediently. I don't know why calling this little fluff ball emergency food sounds a bit out of place, but it's inexplicably appropriate. Lin En looked at the diamond-shaped grey-black hair above the left eye of the emergency food and said sincerely, after buying the little owl emergency food, the sun was about to set. Lin En and Irina did not continue to shop, but returned to Rao Castle. They planned to stay in Rao Castle for another 2 days, and then return to Hogwarts in advance. During these 2 days, Lin En took Irina to visit Rao Manor. This huge manor made Irina very envious. You know, this Rao Manor is probably bigger than Irina's university in her previous life. After 2 days of happy vacation, Lin En and Irina boarded the train back to Hogwarts. As for the little owl emergency food, Lin En let it fly to Hogwarts Castle alone in the name of delivering a package. After learning about this, Irina also scolded Lin En. Chapter 128. Let me check. If you are developing normally. We agreed to raise it together, but you let it go to school by itself? Lin knew she was in the wrong, but she didn't refute it. After returning to Hogwarts Castle, Lin started her alchemy experiment in the dormitory, while Irina found Harry and Ron to find out what happened in Hogwarts Castle during the 3 or 4 days she was away. From Harry, Irina learned that they used the Polyjuice potion brewed by Hermione to sneak into the Slytherin common room on Christmas Day to trick Malfoy. And Hermione accidentally took the Polyjuice potion with cat hair added, turned into a cat-eared girl, and was admitted to the school hospital. After learning about this, Irina ran to the school hospital to visit her best friend as soon as possible, but her crazy upturned corners of her mouth made Harry and Ron feel a little chilly. When she arrived at the school hospital, Irina took advantage of Madame Pomfrey's absence and lifted the curtain next to Hermione's bed and hid in. "Ah, Irina, why are you back?" Hermione screamed subconsciously when she found her curtain was opened and hid under the quilt. After she saw that it was Irina, she poked her head out and asked in confusion. Irina smiled and said, I came back early to accompany you. Are you happy? Well, so cute. Let me touch it. Irina said, and then climbed onto Hermione's bed, kneading the cat ears growing on Hermione's head with both hands, and rubbing her face against Hermione's furry little face. After Irina's set of actions, Hermione's face turned red, and she tried hard to push Irina away from her. Hey, what are you doing, Irina? Hermione found that she couldn't break free, so she had to stare at Irina in anger. Irina said with a smile, don't worry, Hermione. Come here, let me see if you are growing normally. Just when Irina was about to take the next step, the curtain next to the bed was pulled open again, and standing at the curtain was Madame Pomfrey with a serious face. Get out, Miss Lovell, the patient needs to rest. Madame Pomfrey roared, and drove Irina out of the school hospital. Irina, who originally wanted to have a good time with the cat-eared girl Hermione, had to leave the school hospital in disgrace. Although she was a little unconvinced, she also understood that Madame Pomfrey was right. She had to give Hermione some rest time, which would help Hermione recover. More than a week passed, and the Christmas holiday was over. And the little wizards who went home for Christmas also returned to school one after another. One day after school started, Irina, Harry and Ron went to the school hospital to visit Hermione again. After leaving the school hospital, Irina and others heard Filch's roar from upstairs. It's Filch, Harry whispered. He took the lead and ran up the stairs into steps. He hid behind the corner and listened attentively. Ron said nervously, do you think someone has been attacked by the basilisk again? Irina shook her head and said, impossible. If there is another attack, Filch should not be angry. He should be afraid. Soon, the voice came again. Damn it, it's causing trouble for me again. I mop the floor all night, as if my work is not enough. No, this is unbearable. I'm going to find Dumbledore. Filch's footsteps gradually faded, and the three heard the sound of a door slamming in the distance. Irina and the other two poked their heads out from the corner, where Mrs. Norris was attacked before. They saw a large pool of water covering half of the corridor. It seemed that the water was still seeping out from under the door of the bathroom, where Moaning Myrtle was. Now that Filch had stopped shouting, Irina could hear Myrtle's cries echoing through the walls of the bathroom. What's the matter with her? Ron asked in confusion. Harry thought for a moment and said, let's go and have a look. So the three of them pulled their robes up to their ankles and waded through the surging water into the bathroom, where Moaning Myrtle was. Moaning Myrtle's cries were louder and more shrill than before, and she seemed to be hiding in the toilet bowl, where she usually hid. After seeing crying Myrtle, Harry asked, what's going on, Myrtle? Who are you? Myrtle asked in a gurgling voice, are you going to throw something at me again? Harry asked puzzledly, why should I throw something at you? Don't ask me. Myrtle came out with a shout, and a larger stream of water splashed on the already wet floor. I'm staying here thinking about my own problems, and someone thought it was fun to throw a book at me. Hearing the words of crying Myrtle, Irina, who had been silent all the time, seemed to think of something. She felt a stir in her heart, and she perked up and looked at crying Myrtle. Even if someone throws something at you, it won't hurt you. Harry analyzed. I mean, that thing can go straight through you, right? Hearing Harry's words, Myrtle puffed herself up angrily, and she screamed, let everyone throw books at Myrtle, because she can't feel it at all. If you hit her belly with a book, you get 10 points. If you hit her head, you get 50 points. Very good, ha ha ha. What a cute game, but I don't think so. Irina pulled Harry behind her, looked at the crying Myrtle, and asked seriously, Myrtle, did you see the name of the little wizard who threw the book at you? Maybe I can help you punish that person. Irina recalled that in the original plot, Harry seemed to have picked up Voldemort's Horcrux diary here. Could it be that the book thrown at crying Myrtle was that diary? Exclamation mark. More than 10 years have passed, and even Irina can only remember the general plot, and she is not particularly clear about the specific timeline of the plot. I don't know. I was sitting on the toilet seat, thinking about death, and the book suddenly fell from my head. Hearing Irina's words, Moaning Myrtle finally calmed down, and she said in a sobbing voice. Irina continued to ask, so, where is the book now? Moaning Myrtle pointed under the sink and said, it's right there, all soaked in water. Irina hurriedly looked under the sink and saw a small thin book lying on the ground. The tattered black cover of the book was completely wet, just like everything in the bathroom. Seeing Harry trying to pick up the book, Irina stopped him and then picked up the book herself. Irina smoothed the book in an orderly manner and then opened the first page of the book. Sure enough, on the first page of the notebook, Irina saw the name written in unclear ink, Riddle's mother. It's TM Riddle. Please give me rewards and monthly tickets. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129. I think spaghetti should be mixed with 42 grade concrete. I will keep this diary for the time being. Irina put the Horcrux diary away and said to Harry and Ron without question. Irina was the strongest among them, so Harry and Ron had no objection to handing the diary to Irina for safekeeping. After taking the Horcrux diary away, Irina separated from Harry and the others. She returned to the dormitory alone and took out a two-way mirror from her pocket. Lin. Irina injected magic power into the two-way mirror and then called out Lin's name. Soon, Lin's face appeared in the two-way mirror. Irina could see that Lin was wearing a pair of glasses to focus his attention. It seemed that Lin was conducting an alchemy experiment at the moment. I'm sorry to disturb your alchemy, but I have something to tell you. I got Voldemort's Horcrux diary. Irina said so. Hearing this, Lin was slightly stunned. He took off his glasses and asked, "Did you steal it from Ginny?" Irina shook her head and said, "No, Harry and I found it in the bathroom, where Moaning Myrtle is. It seems that Ginny threw the diary there." Lin smiled and said, "It's really a case of searching for something without any effort. How about meeting in the room of requirement after dinner?" Irina agreed softly, "No problem." The connection of the two-way mirror was cut off. Irina packed the Horcrux diary in a wooden box and carried it with her. After the dinner, Irina came to the room of requirement to keep the appointment. When Irina arrived here, she saw a brown wooden door appear on the wall, and the handle of the wooden door was made of mahogany. Seeing this familiar wooden door, Irina understood the way to enter this room. Although the room of requirement can transform into countless different rooms, if someone has already entered it, the second person who wants to enter it at the same time must have the same needs as the first person in order to open the door of the room of requirement and enter the room of requirement. "I need a place to hold a meeting," Irina muttered to herself and successfully opened the wooden door. After entering the room of requirement, Irina saw Lin En sitting next to the round table, and there was a pot of boiling tea on the round table. Seeing Irina's arrival, Lin En gently waved his magic wand like a magician, and a chair flew to the other side of the round table. A white porcelain teacup moved horizontally from the round table to the side, where the chair was, and a thin stream of tea flew out of the teapot and fell into the white porcelain teacup. Irina sat down on the chair and placed the wooden box containing the Horcrux diary on the table. As soon as Lin En raised the magic wand in his hand, the wooden box opened automatically, and the Horcrux diary lay quietly in it. Since the evil product of the Horcrux has the ability to resist magic, it cannot be lifted by the levitation spell. Lin took it out with his hands and turned to the first page to see the name on it. Riddle's mother. It's TM Riddle. It's really Voldemort's Horcrux diary, Lin said in a deep voice. He used transfiguration to transform a white porcelain teacup into a fountain pen. Lin picked up the fountain pen and began to write hard on the blank diary. Seeing this, Irina couldn't help but feel curious. She came over and wanted to see what Lin wrote. However, after seeing what Lin wrote, Irina was a little amused. It was written in the diary, "I personally think that this pasta should be mixed with number 42 concrete because the length of this screw will easily directly affect the torque of the excavator. When you smash it in, it will produce a large amount of high energy protein, commonly known as UFO, in an instant, which will seriously affect the development of the economy and even cause certain nuclear pollution to the Pacific Ocean and the charger." After writing this long string of words, Lin En shook the pen with satisfaction. After a while, this paragraph of text flashed on the diary and then was absorbed by the diary without leaving any trace. Then, a big question mark appeared in the diary. "Hello, I'm Tom Riddle. What is your name, and how did you find my diary? Under this big question mark, another line of text slowly seeped out of the diary. Seeing this line of words, Lin En picked up the pen and planned to continue writing. However, before Lin En started writing, the diary and the pen in Lin En's hand was snatched away by Irina. Wait, let me do it this time. After seeing what Lin En wrote, Irina also became interested, and she started writing in the diary. Lin En leaned over and saw a long string of words appearing in the diary. I don't agree. I think the brightness should be turned up when frying instant noodles, because when the screws are twisted inward, carbon dioxide will be produced, which is not conducive to economic development, and the permanent population of the Vatican is only 800 people, so the postpartum care of South should also start from prenatal care. Not long after, the words written by Irina also disappeared from the diary. Instead, a bigger question mark replaced it. Tom Riddle was silent. He didn't understand what the people outside the diary were doing. Because he didn't absorb enough vitality, he could only pull the people outside the diary who were touching the diary into his memory, and simply possess the people who touched the diary. And when no one possessed him, he couldn't see the scenes outside the diary. Tom Riddle wondered if the people outside the diary were communicating with him in another special language. Waby waby, waby babu? A line of very distorted words appeared in the diary. Seeing this, Lin and Irina looked at each other. What's going on? Has Tom Riddle been driven crazy by them? Exclamation mark. Stop playing, Irina said, and she seemed to have thought of something. By the way, should we use this diary as a learning tool to get some magic that we can't learn for free? Lin thought about it and shook his head. Forget it. This is not a game after all. There is no chance to start over. Facing the evil product of Horcruxes, the more we do, the more mistakes we may make. Next, try not to contact it until the basilisk is killed. Irina asked, then should we hand this Horcrux diary to Professor Dumbledore, or what? Lin lowered his head and pondered. After a long while, he said calmly, after the basilisk is killed, hand it over to Professor Dumbledore. During this time, the diary will be kept with you. Chapter 130. You walking towards me makes me so excited. Perhaps handing the diary to Dumbledore directly could solve the problem, but Lin En was not sure that Dumbledore would really kill the basilisk directly instead of continuing the so-called savior training plan. Moreover, he had no reason to know about the Horcrux. If he rashly said the word Horcrux, he would probably be included in Dumbledore's list of suspicion, even though his father had sacrificed for the Order of the Phoenix. Of course, maybe this was just his imagination, and Dumbledore was not as suspicious as he thought. But as he said to Irina before, this is not a game or a novel, but a reality, and he would not bet his life. Let me keep it? But I'm afraid I will be affected by the Horcrux. You know, this kind of evil thing is always hard to guard against, Irina said hesitantly. Lin En gently waved the wand in his hand, and countless golden rays of light kept interweaving in the air, forming a golden magic circle flashing with strange light. As Lin En tapped the wand on the diary, the golden magic circle slowly fell on the diary and merged into it. After doing all this, Lin En said, I just felt the vitality in this diary. The vitality it has absorbed from Ginny is not much, and it may not be enough to support Tom to leave the diary and control others. In addition, I have refined a sealing array that can prevent all its abilities from extending outside the diary. However, this sealing array has a flaw. That is, the diary must not be opened manually. If the diary is opened manually, then the alchemy array I set on the diary will be invalid. Lin En said to Irina. Irina nodded and said, I understand. I will never open the diary. Since there is a sealing array, I will take it with me. After deciding where the diary should go, the two left the room of requirement. In the following days, everything in Hogwarts Castle went on in an orderly manner, and the so-called attack did not occur again. Time soon came to February 14th. During the breakfast banquet, the young wizards were surprised to see that the walls of the hall were covered with large and dazzling pink flowers, and there were many heart-shaped confetti floating down from the light blue ceiling. In the teacher's seat, Lockhart was wearing a bright pink robe that matched the decorations, and was waving to the young wizards. Seeing this scene, Harry and others were all a little disgusted. They hated Lockhart, a boastful person who had no ability, but liked to seek a sense of existence. Everyone, happy Valentine's Day. Lockhart stood up in the teacher's seat and said loudly, so far, 46 people have given me greeting cards. I would like to thank them. Yes, I took the initiative to arrange this little surprise for everyone, and there is more. Lockhart clapped his hands and strode into the 12 gloomy dwarves from the doors leading to the entrance hall. They were different from ordinary dwarves. Lockhart made them all wear golden wings and carry harps. My friendly little cupids with greeting cards. Lockhart said cheerfully, they will be wandering around the school today, delivering Valentine's Day cards to you. There's more fun to come. I believe my colleagues will be happy to join in. Why not ask Professor Snape to teach you how to make a love potion? If you're interested, Professor Flitwick is more proficient in psychedelic magic than any wizard I've ever seen. That cunning old dog. As Lockhart finished speaking, Professor Flitwick buried his face in his hands. Looking at Professor Snape's expression, it seemed that, if anyone asked him how to make a love potion, they would be forced to drink poison. Professor Snape seemed to be resisting the urge to shoot a sharp and invisible shot at Lockhart's head. Looking at Lockhart on the stage, Lin seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a wicked smile. For a whole day, these dwarves were sending Valentine's Day cards to the little wizards in various classrooms, which made the professor extremely annoyed. In the afternoon, Harry was also caught by a dwarf, and was given a card, while singing a song. This made Harry so angry, that he wanted to evaporate on the spot. Irina, who was standing by, was enjoying the melon very much, especially when she heard the dwarf singing his eyes were as green as a newly pickled toad. Irina couldn't help laughing out loud. However, things change, and this kind of thing soon fell on Irina's head. I have a message for music and dance to personally convey to Irina lol. After the last class in the afternoon, Irina just walked out of the classroom, and a dwarf called out Irina's name. Seeing this dwarf, Irina's smile froze, but Harry, who was standing by, showed a gloating smile. You laughed at me before, now it's your turn. Harry laughed secretly. Sure enough, the smile will not disappear, it will only move. At this moment, Irina was looking at the dwarf expressionlessly. She swore that, if the dwarf said anything strange, she would hang the dwarf up and beat him, and force him to tell the messenger, and then hang the messenger up and beat him. The dwarf had a stinky face. You are walking towards me, which makes me so eager. I have never had this feeling before. You are mine and I'm yours. If you look at me one more time, I will explode. If you get closer, I will melt. Irina looked at the dwarf singing and dancing in front of her with a frown on her face. She felt her fist harden. Lin. Irina gritted her teeth and said. The cold breath she exuded made Harry and others shrink their necks subconsciously. Before the dwarf finished singing, Irina turned her head and wanted to leave. Stop. However, the dwarf rushed over and grabbed Irina's wizard robe. During the struggle, several books fell out of Irina's pocket, including the Horcrux diary that Irina carried with her. Ginny Weasley, who was not far away, showed a look of horror when she saw the diary under Irina's feet. Disarm you. Petrify everyone. Fall to the ground. Irina was a little angry and swung her wand continuously, casting 3 spells in succession. The red light hit the dwarf's chest, knocking it back and flying out, hitting the wall and slowly sliding down. Before it fell, the whole body binding spell fixed it in place, and the 3rd coma spell knocked it out directly. Irina picked up the books on the ground and turned away. She planned to settle accounts with Lin. Thanks to the book friend Chai and Qian Liu Xingguang for the 1000 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. Chapter 131 The Disappearing Diary. Lin En, do you have any last words? Before the dinner started, Irina caught Lin En in the lobby outside the auditorium. She pulled out her wand and glared at Lin En. Looking at Irina who was gritting her teeth, Lin En raised her hands and surrendered without hesitation. Wait, don't do it yet. I have a gift for you. Consider it an apology. Although Lin En knew that it was not a good thing to tease Irina to satisfy his own bad taste, he really couldn't help it this morning. Of course, Lin En was not a person who didn't know how to advance and retreat. After doing something bad, he would naturally pay for what he did. Lin En took out a wooden box with exquisite patterns from his pocket and handed it to Irina. What gift? This is a bracelet? After seeing this exquisite wooden box, Irina suppressed her anger. She opened the box and saw a crystal clear jade bracelet appear in the box. Lin En explained, "Do you remember the alchemy experiment I was doing when you contacted me with the two-way mirror last time? At that time, I was trying to refine this kind of bracelet. This bracelet is called the Guardian Jade Bracelet, which can greatly weaken the power of the black magic acting on the wearer. Even the power of the 3 unforgivable curses, except for the killing curse, can be weakened by it." After learning about the powerful effect of this jade bracelet, Irina couldn't help but feel a little happy. Although she still blamed Lin En for teasing her, she decided to generously spare Lin En's life. "I can feel a special magic spreading from this bracelet. Is this its effect?" Irina carefully put the Guardian Jade Bracelet on her left wrist. She felt the magic fluctuations from the Guardian Jade Bracelet and said so. Lin En smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, if the black magic attacking you is less powerful, it can even block it directly." Looking at Lin En with a smile on her face, Irina rolled her eyes at him, and then snorted proudly, "I'll let you go this time, you little black man." Time passed day by day. During this period of time, Lin En refined many alchemical products that could resist black magic, such as the protective jade bracelet, including but not limited to pendants, rings, and pendants. These inconspicuous small objects, Hermione often found that after Irina came back from playing with Lin En, she had an extra ring on her hand, a pendant on her neck, or a few beautiful pendants on her wizard robe. Of course, Irina also complained that these self-defense alchemical products made Hermione and others more suspicious of her relationship with Lin En, but these small objects were the least likely to be suspected of being special alchemical products. For these things that could protect her life and safety, Irina still wore them without exception. The only thing that could comfort Irina was that the ring looked like a flower ring with only decorative significance, not a metal ring with special meaning. Perhaps these defensive alchemical products were not immune to the physical damage caused by the Cruciatus curse and other dark magic, but those special powers that could attack the soul could be resisted by these defensive alchemical products. Take Neville's parents, the Longbottoms, as an example. If they wore these defensive alchemical products made by Lin during the Voldemort period, even if they were tortured by the Cruciatus curse, they would not have any sequelae, because the Cruciatus curse's attack on the soul would be resisted by these defensive alchemical products. You know, the soul is a very mysterious thing even in the magic world. There are only a few kinds of magic that can target the soul for thousands of years. However, the alchemical products made by Lin can resist this kind of power, which shows how high Lin's alchemy level is. Even in the French magic world, including the great alchemist Nicolas Flamel and Lin's master Wallace and Green, there are probably only a handful of alchemists who can refine alchemical products that defend the soul. In addition to these, because the Horcrux diary fell into Irina's hands, Hogwarts Castle was still very peaceful during this period. And Harry, who did not enter Tom Riddle's memories, did not doubt Hagrid as in the original book. However, precisely because there were no more attacks, the little wizards believed that no matter who the attacker was, that person had probably retired. So the attitude of those little wizards who suspected Harry was the heir of Slytherin towards Harry gradually improved. In a herb class, Ernie Macmillan, who had always hated Harry, politely handed him a bucket of jumping toadstools. In March, several mandrakes held a lively dance in the third greenhouse, which made Professor Sprout very happy, because it meant that these mandrakes were about to mature. These mandrakes are about to mature, which also means that Mrs. Norris, Justin and Nick, who was almost headless, who were attacked, will be reborn. Soon, the Easter holiday arrived. The second year wizards also faced the trouble of choosing elective courses. Just like in the original book, Hermione was unwilling to give up any elective course, and she believed that these elective courses were very important for her future. Harry, who hated Professor Snape, said that he only wanted to give up the potion class, but unfortunately the potion class was a compulsory course, and he was afraid that he would never be able to realize this wish. Well, unless Hogwarts was occupied by Death Eaters. Irina, what courses are you going to choose? After discussing with Ron to no avail, Harry turned his eyes to Irina, who was eating snacks. Well, Irina wiped her mouth. I might just choose a course on care of magical creatures. Like Lin, Irina was not willing to let those useless courses that would leave her jobless after graduation occupy her time. Just like Lin, an alchemist, chose the ancient runes course, which was the easiest for him, Irina also chose the care of magical creatures course, which matched her magical animal affinity talent. Harry was a little surprised and said, "Ah, you only choose one. Then you have a lot of free time." Irina smiled and said, "You don't have to refer to my choice. You know, I just like to slack off." Harry and Ron didn't get the results they wanted from Irina, so they continued to discuss on their own. Hogwarts is always very busy in a year. Not long after the Easter holiday, the Quidditch competition was about to start again. However, on this Friday, the day before the Quidditch competition, Irina received bad news. Something happened. "Irina, come back to the dormitory with me." Irina, who was still strolling leisurely, was pulled back to the dormitory by Hermione, who looked anxious. It seemed that their dormitory had been robbed and was turned upside down, and Irina's pillow was thrown on the floor. "It's over." Seeing this scene, Irina's pupils slightly dilated, and she was a little lost. You know, since the last time the diary fell on the ground and was seen by the little wizards around, Irina felt that carrying it with her was also risky, so she hid the Horcrux diary under her pillow. But now, not only was the pillow overturned, but the diary inside was also gone. Chapter 132. At least she could save her life. Everything that happened in the dormitory caught Irina off guard. Since she had always been a big sister in the same grade and below Gryffindor, no one dared to touch her things without permission, which made her feel at ease when she hid the diary under her pillow. But now, a thief from nowhere threw away her pillow and stole the Horcrux diary under the pillow. This sudden thing made Irina a little unexpected. "Irina, it seems that there is a thief in our dormitory. Check if you have lost anything," Hermione said anxiously in Irina's ear. Irina shook her head. She didn't need to look anymore. Other things didn't matter, but the most important thing, the Horcrux diary, had disappeared without a trace. "Listen, Hermione, try not to walk around the castle alone in the future. I suspect that the thief may be the murderer who released the basilisk. I'm afraid there will be another attack next time." Irina held Hermione with her backhand and said seriously. Hearing Irina's words, Hermione was a little puzzled. "Ah. Why do you say that the thief is the murderer? There seems to be no necessary connection between the two." Irina interrupted her and said, "Don't worry about it. Just promise me that no matter what you do next, you must go together, including Harry and Ron. I will remind them tomorrow." Seeing Irina's cautious attitude, Hermione didn't know what to say. She nodded gently and agreed. After Hermione agreed, Irina couldn't sleep at all. She left the dormitory and came to the empty Gryffindor common room. "Lin, the diary was stolen." Irina injected magic into the two-way mirror and said in a deep voice to Lin in pajamas in the two-way mirror. Hearing this, Lin on the other side of the two-way mirror was stunned for a moment, and then his expression became solemn. Lin En in the two-way mirror waved his wand, and the wizard robe was put on outside his pajamas. After he was dressed, he said to Irina, "Meet outside the room of requirement in 2 minutes." Irina nodded, and then cut off the connection of the two-way mirror. The two of them ignored the curfew, and came to the outside of the room of requirement with a layer of disillusionment. "I need a place to hold a meeting." Lin En walked back and forth in front of the room of requirement 3 times, and the familiar wooden door appeared again. The two walked into the room of requirement one after another, and removed the disillusionment. After closing the door, Lin En didn't have the mood to make tea. After sitting down at the round table, he cast his eyes on Irina. "The diary was stolen? When was it stolen? Do you have any clues?" Irina shook her head. She didn't find any evidence in the dormitory. Lin En continued to ask, "So, since you got the diary until now, has it been seen by others? Who has seen it?" Irina recalled and said unconfidently, "I have never shown the diary to anyone else, except for Valentine's Day, when I was pulled by the dwarf and the diary fell to the ground, and was seen by people around me. Ginny seemed to be among them." Hearing this, Lin En immediately understood everything. Perhaps after Ginny saw the diary in Irina's hand that day, she was afraid that the diary would tell Irina the truth, so she took the opportunity to steal the diary today. Thinking of this, Lin En slapped herself immediately. "It's all my fault, that day that I had a brain twitch and asked the dwarf to bring you a song, and the diary was discovered. I brought disaster upon myself," Lin En said very remorsefully. Seeing Lin En's face getting red and swollen, Irina shrank her neck subconsciously. It seemed that the blow Lin En had just given her was not light. Since it has already happened, there is no point in regretting it. But from these clues, we should be able to determine that it was Ginny who stole the diary. Irina said so. Irina thought, how about I steal it back? Lin En sighed, you couldn't steal the diary from Ginny before, let alone Ginny who is now on full alert. Irina said unwillingly, does it mean that we have to follow the original book and wait for the Horcrux to take Ginny into the Chamber of Secrets, and then let Harry and the others go into the Chamber of Secrets to rescue people? This feeling of being powerless despite having the power of prophecy made Irina very uncomfortable. Lin En said helplessly, it seems that we can only wait and see what happens now, but things are in our hands. Try to remind people around you not to travel alone during this period, and give this to Ginny. As he said, Lin En handed a bracelet to Irina. What is this? Irina was a little confused. Lin introduced, this bracelet contains a lot of life force stored in advance. After Ginny's life force is absorbed by the diary, it can replenish a small part of the missing life force. At least it can save Ginny's life. As for the rest of the life force, we can only wait until the Horcrux is destroyed and automatically return the life force to Ginny. Irina nodded solemnly. The conversation ended in vain. With the diary out of control, their best way was to wait and see. The next morning. This day was the day of the Quidditch match, and the little wizards came to the auditorium to enjoy breakfast. Irina walked up to Ginny and said, Ginny, this bracelet is for you. After hearing Irina's voice, Ginny stood up subconsciously, and after reacting, she looked at Irina with a guilty conscience and asked, Sister Irina, why did you suddenly give me a bracelet? Irina said, I bought it when I went out to play during the Easter holiday. I saw it when I was cleaning up the stolen dormitory yesterday, and I thought it was very suitable for you. Hearing the word stolen dormitory, Ginny shrank her neck with a guilty conscience. She took the bracelet, put it on her hand, and then whispered, thank you, Sister Irina. After Irina left, Ginny felt very guilty. Irina was so good to her, but she made a mess of Irina's bed. Ginny felt very sorry for Irina. After the breakfast banquet, Harry heard the voice of the basilisk again, and he told the three of them about it. Hearing this, Hermione seemed to have thought of something. She slapped her head and said, Harry, I suddenly realized something. I need to go to the library first. As she said that, Hermione wanted to run away. Irina quickly stopped her and said, Hermione, have you forgotten what I said? Hermione explained, I remember. Don't worry, I will at least call 2 people to go with me. Nothing will happen. Hearing Hermione's words, Irina thought about it, and then she felt relieved. 3 little wizards are traveling together. Tom Riddle should not be brave enough to attack Hermione in front of the 3 little wizards, right? Exclamation mark. Please give me rewards and monthly tickets. Chapter 133, This Road of No Return. I will accompany you. After Hermione hurried away, Harry and Ron also hurried towards the Quidditch pitch. At this time, there was less than an hour before the game started. Irina and Ron walked to the audience, while Harry walked to the field with the other members of the Gryffindor Quidditch team amid the thunderous cheers. Oliver Wood, the goalkeeper and captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team, took off into the air and flew around the goalposts to warm up. On the other side, the members of the Hufflepuff Quidditch team also walked onto the lawn. They were wearing light yellow uniforms and gathered together to discuss tactics in the last minute. In the middle of the 2 teams, Madam Hooch had already released the ball and was ready to start the game. However, just as Harry was about to ride his flying broom, Professor McGonagall walked and ran across the field from a distance, holding a huge purple microphone in her hand. The game is cancelled. Professor McGonagall said loudly to the crowded audience, all students must return to the common room of this college, where the head of the college will tell you more about the situation. Please leave as soon as possible. In the audience, Irina's heart sank when she heard Professor McGonagall's words, just like a huge rock sinking into the water. Hermione is in trouble. Such a thought appeared in Irina's mind, but she was a little confused. Obviously Hermione went to the library with other little wizards. Why was she attacked? Exclamation mark. Could it be that she left the team alone for some reason? Exclamation mark. With deep doubts, Irina and Ron walked towards Professor McGonagall. At this time, Professor McGonagall was talking to Harry, and when she saw Irina and Ron coming, she turned her head and said, "Potter, I think you'd better come with me." "Well, maybe you'd better come too, we'll and Lowell." Professor McGonagall's words confirmed what Irina thought. Irina followed Professor McGonagall back to the castle, and walked into the school hospital ward with anxiety. "You will be a little shocked," Professor McGonagall said in a surprisingly gentle tone. "Another attack has occurred, and the number of people attacked is not small." Irina was somewhat shocked to see that in addition to Hermione lying on the hospital bed, there were actually 2 other Ravenclaw girls who were petrified. So this is how it was solved! Exclamation mark. As long as all the witnesses are killed, it will be a perfect stealth. If Hermione and the people with her are petrified, then the basilisk will not be discovered? Exclamation mark. Tom, you are really smart. Irina cursed in her heart. It was a little hard for her to accept that her best friend was petrified by the basilisk. Not only that, after Hermione was petrified by the basilisk, all kinds of bad news came one after another. Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge came to Hogwarts and wanted to put Hagrid, who was suspected of opening the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago, in Azkaban. Although Irina gave Hagrid a bead made by Lin that could resist Dementors to a certain extent before Hagrid was captured, it is conceivable that even with the alchemical bead, Hagrid would suffer a lot if he was imprisoned in Azkaban with a lot of Dementors. Not only that, even Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, was suspended and expelled from Hogwarts Castle. Of course, it was impossible for Dumbledore to be expelled with his ability. The reason why he left the castle was just because he wanted to maintain the ridiculous order. "Hagrid is my friend. I can't watch him being imprisoned in Azkaban for so long," Irina said to Lin sadly in the request room. Lin and Hagrid can only be said to be nodding acquaintances who met by chance. Although they have met several times, their relationship is only maintained at the level of ordinary friends. But Irina was different. She often went to Hagrid's hut with Harry and the others to visit Hagrid. She also had a good friendship with Hagrid. As a friend, she didn't want to see Hagrid suffer such a huge injustice. Irina's beautiful face seemed a little distorted, and she was constantly struggling in her heart. Finally, she stood up and said seriously, "Lin, I want to kill the basilisk in advance and end the events of this school year." Lin En did not answer her words immediately, but held his chin with both hands, looking at her beautiful ice blue eyes seriously. "But, are you ready? I mean, ready to completely transform into a butterfly that disrupts everything?" Irina nodded without hesitation and said softly, "I think, since we are here and have the ability of foresight as time travelers, then we should make everything develop in a good direction instead of letting the tragedy happen again. Hermione's matter woke me up. Lin En, I don't want to do nothing anymore." Lin En also stood up. He supported the table with both hands, his dark red eyes staring at Irina. "Once the bow is shot, there is no turning back. Since you have chosen this road of no return, then I will accompany you. After all, you and I are both time travelers, grasshoppers on a rope, sharing honor and disgrace." Lin sat back in the chair and said calmly, "If we want to kill the basilisk, there are 2 things we must do. First, steal the sorting hat from the headmaster's office, where the Gryffindor sword that can break the basilisk's defense is stored. Second, get the Parseltongue language from Harry to open the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets." Irina nodded and asked in a deep voice, "Is there anything I can do?" Lin said, "I'm responsible for stealing the sorting hat, and as Harry's good friend, you are responsible for getting the key to the Chamber of Secrets from him. You need to let him say the 2 sentences open and speak to me, Slytherin, the greatest of the 4 giants of Hogwarts in Parseltongue, and use the recording function of the 2-way mirror to record them." Irina wrote down the 2 sentences on paper and she agreed. Lin En continued, "Tomorrow is Monday. I will go to the principal's office when the professors are in class, and you will choose a deserted place to get the Parseltongue recording. If the plan goes well, maybe we can enter the secret room at night tomorrow night." Irina nodded vigorously, indicating that she remembered it. What they were going to do next could be said to completely break the original plotline, so even though they had made sufficient preparations, they still felt heavy in their hearts after leaving the room of requirement. Chapter 134 The entrance to the secret room. The second class on Monday morning was a class that the deans of the 4 major colleges and Lockhart were all in, but this class was not for Lin En. The deans of the 4 major colleges were teaching the little wizards in the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th grades respectively, while Lockhart was teaching Irina and others class. Lin En, who only chose an ancient rune class as an elective, naturally had free time for this class. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was patrolling, Lin En cast a layer of disillusionment on himself in broad daylight and came to the principal's office. Looking at the stone statue responsible for guarding the entrance to the principal's office, Lin En removed the disillusionment after making sure that no one was around, and then took out a 3 or 4 meter long list from his pocket. The list was full of various foods from Honeydukes, lemon sherbet, blowing super bubble gum, licorice wand, chocolate frog, Zizzy bee candy, Bibby multi-flavored beans. Lin En read out the foods on the list one by one. When he read cockroach pile, the stone statue moved and made way for the passage to the principal's office. Seeing this, Lin En couldn't help but chuckle. This pile of cockroaches is really the favorite of this old bee. After reciting the password to enter the principal's office correctly, Lin En walked in with peace of mind. The walls around the principal's office are still full of portraits of past principals, but at this time, these past principals are sleeping soundly, and no one noticed Lin En, the uninvited guest. After seeing the sorting hat on the table, Lin En's eyes lit up and grabbed the sorting hat. The sorting hat felt that it was lifted up and wanted to shout. However, before it screamed, Lin En quickly stuffed it into his pocket where he had cast the traceless extension spell, so that the sound of the sorting hat could not be heard at all. After successfully taking the sorting hat away, Lin En returned the same way and left the principal's office. Lin was not worried about whether the disappearance of the sorting hat would be discovered by other professors. After Dumbledore left Hogwarts Castle, these professors, out of respect for Dumbledore, would not enter the principal's office without permission, even if they knew the password. On the other side, Harry and others who had finished Lockhart's defense against the dark arts class were about to walk towards the auditorium. But Irina pulled Harry out alone and asked Ron to go to the auditorium to eat first. "Irina, what do you want to talk to me about?" Harry looked at Irina in confusion. Irina did not speak, but pulled Harry all the way to an abandoned classroom with no one in it. Irina looked at Harry seriously and asked, "Harry, do you want to find the murderer and restore Hermione?" Harry nodded vigorously and said, "As a matter of course, I definitely want to find the damn murderer, catch him and hand him over to the Ministry of Magic, so that not only Hermione can be safe, but also Hagrid can come back from Azkaban." Irina said, "You know, Harry, to enter Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, you need Parseltongue, so I need you to read these 2 sentences as the key to enter the Chamber of Secrets." As she said that, Irina took out the note and placed it in front of Harry. Harry was stunned for a moment and said in disbelief, "Irina, do you know the location of Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets?" Irina shook her head and said half truthfully, "I don't know yet, but after we have the key to enter Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, we can play your voice while looking for the Chamber of Secrets. In this way, as long as we get close to the Chamber of Secrets, the mechanism at the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets will hear your voice, and the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets will automatically open, and then we will find it." Hearing this, Harry said in surprise, "So that's it. It's you, Irina. I'm afraid only you and Hermione can think of such a good idea." Harry no longer hesitated and immediately took Irina's note and read it out. Hearing Harry's voice, Irina frowned. Harry's words were all normal language, not Parseltongue at all. Irina waved her wand, transformed a chair into a snake, and then let the snake crawl in front of Harry. "Harry, talk to it," Irina ordered. Harry nodded, trying to imagine that the snake was a real snake, and then tried to talk to the transformed snake. Hiss. A strange snake hissing sound came out of Harry's mouth, and Irina quickly took out the 2-way mirror and recorded Harry's words. After Harry finished speaking, Irina played it back again with the 2-way mirror. After confirming that it was correct, she smiled. "Okay, Harry, we can go back to eat, and we will find the Chamber of Secrets together tomorrow," Irina said happily. Harry nodded, naively thinking that Irina would really take him to find the Chamber of Secrets tomorrow. Soon, time came tonight. Outside the bathroom, where Moaning Myrtle was, Lin and Irina appeared here at the same time. It was curfew time, and the professors who were constantly patrolling in the castle forced Lin and Irina to hurry up. Have you brought all the equipment? Lin looked at Irina and asked in a deep voice. Tonight is the time to face the basilisk head on, so they must not be careless. Irina checked her contact lenses and then checked the various jewelry-shaped defensive all-chemical products she was wearing. Then she nodded and said, I've brought them all. So the two of them walked into the bathroom where Moaning Myrtle was. Lin and Irina were lucky because Moaning Myrtle was not in the bathroom at this time. The two of them came to a sink in the bathroom and saw a small snake carved on the side of one of the copper faucets on the sink. Open the entrance to the secret room, Lin said. Irina nodded gently, took out a two-way mirror from her pocket, and then injected magic power into a button on the back of the two-way mirror. Hiss. Harry's word open in Parseltongue rang in the bathroom. A dazzling white light lit up from the copper faucet, and the copper faucet began to rotate rapidly, and then the entire sink moved. Under the gaze of Lin En and Irina, the pool slowly disappeared, and in its place, a very thick water pipe appeared, which was big enough for a person to enter. Obviously, this was the entrance to the secret room. Lin En and Irina looked at each other, nodded at the same time, and then entered the pipe one after the other, letting go and letting themselves slide down. After both of them entered the secret passage, the entrance to the secret room slowly closed and restored the original appearance of the bathroom. However, just a few seconds after the bathroom restored its original appearance, a petite figure slowly walked into the bathroom. Haha, have you been discovered again? Interesting. The owner of this petite figure raised the corner of her mouth slightly, revealing a strange smile, and a cold, but obviously male voice came out. Hiss. Then, a strange sound like the hissing of a snake sounded again in the bathroom, and the entrance to the secret room was opened again. The petite figure held a diary in her arms, and she jumped into the pipe without hesitation. After she entered the pipe, the entrance to the secret room closed again, and the abandoned bathroom returned to its original silence. Thanks to the book friend Mu Yin Luo for the 100 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. Chapter 135, Slytherin Statue, Battle with the Basilisk. The pipe leading into the secret room did not seem to be designed for humans. When Lin En and Irina slid into the pipe, they felt as if they were rushing down a dark, sticky, and endless slide. On the way down, the two could see many pipes branching out in all directions, but none of them were as thick as this one. The pipe they were in was winding, and it took an unknown amount of time before they landed on the ground. The nearly vertical pipe became horizontal, and Lin En and Irina flew out of the pipe. The two waved their wands at the same time and cast a floating spell on themselves, allowing them to land steadily on the wet ground. Swish. Lin En raised his left hand, and a ball of fire emerged from his palm, illuminating the place where they were. This was a wide stone tunnel that could accommodate 4 or 5 people side by side. The surroundings were very dark and damp, and both the ground and the surrounding stone walls were wet. Watch your feet, Lin En whispered. The ground here was very slippery, and even if they were not careful, they might fall. Irina nodded slightly, and followed Lin En forward. After they walked a few steps, they found that the ground was covered with bones of various small animals. These bones were probably the remains of prey left by the serpent monster after hunting over the years. Irina walked carefully, trying to avoid stepping on the animal bones on the ground. After turning a corner, Lin En and Irina stopped at the same time. Under the illumination of the flame in Lin En's hand, a huge snakeskin appeared in their sight. This was an extremely huge snakeskin, with a strange green luster on the surface. It lay coiled on the ground of the stone tunnel. Just from this snakeskin, Lin En and Irina could calculate that the length of the serpent monster was at least 10 meters. This is a very good alchemical material. Wait for me for a moment, Lin En said, and a mithril carving knife appeared in his palm. This snakeskin is an extremely precious material in both the field of magic alchemy and formation alchemy. Needless to say, this shed snakeskin itself has extremely high physical and magic resistance. Whether it is used to make alchemical leather armor or other defensive alchemical products, it is an excellent raw material. I'm afraid that Lin En does not need to engrave other defensive alchemical arrays on it. Its defensive power is comparable to the defensive alchemical products of other famous alchemists. As for the field of magic alchemy, it has been mentioned before that magic alchemy can unreasonably extract certain special properties of materials, or even certain symbolic properties contained in the materials. Therefore, if Lin En uses the snake skin shed by the basilisk as raw material for magic alchemy, then the refined product is likely to inherit the petrification magic and direct death magic of the basilisk. This is a terrifying ability comparable to the Avada Kedavra curse. Lin En kept waving the carving knife, cutting the huge snakeskin shed by the basilisk into dozens of equal amounts of snakeskin materials, and then stuffed them into his canvas bag. After doing all this, Lin En waved to Irina, signaling her to move on. After passing the huge snakeskin, they turned countless corners, and finally, a solid wall appeared in front of them, blocking their way. Two snakes entangled with each other were carved on the stone wall, and the eyes of the two snakes were inlaid with crystal clear emeralds. Before Lin En could speak, Irina came forward and played the word open spoken by Harry in Parseltongue again with the two-way mirror. Hiss. A strange sound sounded, and the two entangled snakes on the stone wall separated, and the stone wall also cracked from the middle, slowly sliding to both sides and disappearing. Through the stone wall, the space in front suddenly became clear. Lin En and Irina found themselves in a huge, dark square, and in the square were many towering stone pillars carved with entangled snakes. These stone pillars supported the top of the square, so that this secret room would not be buried due to collapse. Lin and Irina leaned down slightly at the same time, listening to all the sounds coming from the surroundings. However, except for the hollow but loud echoes produced by the two walking in this ghostly square, there was no sound. Not long after, Lin and Irina reached the end of the square. When they were parallel to the last pair of stone pillars, a huge statue that was tall enough to support the top of the square suddenly appeared in front of them. Looking up, they saw a huge face, an old and monkey-like face, with a sparse but long beard that almost dragged to the hem of the statue's wizard robe. Two grey big feet stood on the ground of the square. This pair of big feet alone was taller than Lin and Irina. There is no doubt that the owner of this statue is Salazar Slytherin, one of the founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. They knew that the damned basilisk was behind the statue of Slytherin, but what was blocking them was the statue of Slytherin, the great wizard who had made great achievements in establishing Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The two looked at the huge statue of Slytherin in silence. After an unknown amount of time, Lin En suddenly moved. As he waved his hands, countless golden threads intertwined in the air, gradually transforming into alchemical arrays. In less than 5 minutes, 3 alchemical arrays were refined and suspended around Lin En. Although the number of alchemical arrays that appeared had reached the upper limit of what Lin En could use on a daily basis, Lin En did not stop his actions. As he waved his hands, more alchemical arrays formed around him. There was a huge and faint magical wave flashing on Lin En's right arm. It was obvious that he was using the authority of the demon god to absorb the power of the Philosopher's Stone, and the huge magic power that supported the formation of the alchemical array was also provided by the Philosopher's Stone. When the number of alchemical arrays distributed around Lin En reached 10, Lin En stopped his movements, and his right arm trembled slightly. At this time, the magic power flowing through Lin En's body was infinitely close to his physical limit. Lin En's body was like a huge magic wand, absorbing the power of the magic stone to maintain the operation of these alchemical arrays. It seems that it has reached the limit. Lin En sensed his body, while absorbing the magic power of the magic stone at a higher power, maintaining the operation of 10 alchemical arrays at the same time, was already his limit. Action. Lin En nodded slightly to Irina and said, "If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 136. Is that so? But I don't think so. Irina agreed obediently and took out the two-way mirror again. Unlike the previous 2 times, the hissing snake language emitted by the two-way mirror this time was longer. The strange hissing sound echoed in the square, making the surrounding environment seem more gloomy. If these hissing snake languages are translated into human language, it means Speak to me, Slytherin, the greatest of the 4 giants of Hogwarts. When Harry's voice in the two-way mirror stopped, the huge Slytherin statue also moved. The mouth on Slytherin's face opened, and it opened wider and wider, and finally formed a huge hole. Lin and Irina keenly discovered that something was moving in the mouth of the Slytherin statue. A rustling sound came, as if something was sliding up from the depths of the statue. Lin En waved his wand, and 10 alchemical arrays completed the energy storage in an instant, while Irina raised her wand and prepared for the monster that might exist in the Slytherin statue. Soon, a huge monster fell out of Slytherin's mouth, and when it fell to the ground, it shocked the entire small square. The huge monster that appeared was naturally the basilisk in Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. This basilisk looked more than 10 meters long, and the diameter of its huge snake body was probably larger than Lin En's height. A pair of yellow light bulb-like eyes stared at Lin En and Irina. While looking at the basilisk, Lin En and Irina only felt a huge force rushing towards them, as if they wanted to wipe them out in an instant. But the alchemical contact lenses they wore released soft energy at the same time, blocking the strange power of the basilisk, so that these powers could not hurt them. Do it, Lin En shouted in a low voice, and when he waved his wand, 10 alchemical arrays simultaneously shot golden beams of light at the basilisk. Under the power of the magic stone, each alchemy array can emit more than 30 golden beams within 1 second. With these 10 alchemy arrays running at the same time, the number of golden beams shot at the basilisk has reached more than 300 per second. Dingling clang. Countless golden beams shot at the basilisk's body in an instant, emitting countless sparks. The scales of the basilisk are very hard. Not only does it have extremely high magic resistance, but even physical damage can hardly break its defense. Every golden beam that landed on the basilisk could only leave a white mark on its body surface, and could not cause more damage. You know, at the beginning, such a golden beam could directly blow up the head of the giant monster, which also had good magic resistance. However, although a golden beam could not break the basilisk's defense, the accumulation of more than 300 golden beams per second bombarding the basilisk could still continuously grind away the scales of the basilisk. A drop of water can wear away a stone, not to mention the golden beams that already have a good killing power. Exclamation mark. When Lin En controlled these alchemical arrays to attack the basilisk, in order to maximize the efficiency of penetrating the snake scales, he basically aimed at the same part of the basilisk. In less than 3 minutes, a blood mark appeared on the basilisk's body. The dense golden beams tore through its defenses one after another, causing damage to its body. Hiss. Feeling the pain from its body, the basilisk hissed angrily and rushed towards the two of them quickly. Disperse. Irina shouted softly, rolling to the right and avoiding the attack of the basilisk. Lin En had already reacted the moment the basilisk moved. At the moment he dodged to the left, he also cast a crushing spell at the wound of the basilisk. Irina on the other side also raised her wand to fight back, casting a silent freezing spell at the basilisk. Unfortunately, the basilisk's magic resistance was too high, which made Irina's freezing spell directly immune to it. The two kept retreating, circling the stone pillars in the small square to pull the basilisk, while the basilisk kept chasing the two, opening its mouth wide to bite them. Tear into pieces. Seeing the basilisk open its huge mouth, Irina cast a cutting spell without hesitation. A grey light broke through the air and sank into the upper jaw of the basilisk's mouth, tearing the flesh of the basilisk, and countless smelly blood flowed down the basilisk's fangs. There was no snake scale protection inside the basilisk's mouth, which allowed Irina's spell to smoothly cut the flesh of the basilisk when it hit the upper jaw of the basilisk. Any creature has its weaknesses, and the basilisk is no exception. It has extremely high magic resistance and physical resistance on the surface of its body, but it is very fragile inside. Otherwise, in the original book, Harry would not have been able to stab the basilisk to death with a sword from the mouth of the basilisk, even if the weapon in Harry's hand was the Gryffindor Holy Sword. After Irina's spell injured the basilisk, Lin En looked at Irina thoughtfully, and then gently waved his magic wand. The 10 alchemical arrays changed their attack direction at the same time. They no longer attacked the basilisk's previous wounds, but shot towards the 2 yellow eyeballs of the basilisk. Lin En and Irina both wore alchemical contact lenses that could be immune to the basilisk's instant death magic and petrification magic, which made the basilisk's eyes no longer a threat to the two of them. Therefore, Lin En did not target the basilisk's eyes when attacking just now. But now, after discovering that attacking from the inside of the basilisk's body can achieve miraculous results, the basilisk's eyes have become Lin En's best target. After all, the most vulnerable part of the basilisk is not only its mouth, but also its eye sockets. Lin En can cause greater damage to the basilisk through the basilisk's eye sockets. In just a breath of time, the 2 yellow eyes of the basilisk were shot out by Lin En's alchemical array. The eye sockets that originally had a pair of light bulb-like eyes now became empty. A large amount of black blood flowed out of the basilisk's eye sockets, staining the ground with a layer of black and red blood. The basilisk seemed to have been seriously injured. It hissed, and its entire snake body kept twisting and struggling. A large amount of black blood flowed out as the basilisk struggled. It seems that, even if we don't use our trump cards, we can still kill this beast. Seeing that the basilisk was gradually losing its ability to resist, Lin En removed 5 of the alchemical arrays and said lightly. Irina also smiled. The basilisk was severely damaged, and they seemed to be on the verge of victory. Really? But I don't think so. But just when the two were feeling happy, a chilling voice sounded from behind them. Lin En and Irina turned back suddenly, revealing a vigilant look. A little witch in a Gryffindor wizard robe slowly walked towards the entrance of the square. She had a strange smile on her face, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised. What really made Lin En and Irina wary was the diary in her arms. Please give me rewards and monthly tickets. Chapter 137 The Undrawn Sword of Gryffindor. The little witch in the Gryffindor wizard robe was Ginny Weasley, but Lin and Irina knew that Ginny was no longer the innocent and lovely little witch. The strange smile on her face and the diary in her arms showed that she had been controlled by Voldemort's Horcrux diary. Tom Riddle. Lin looked at the possessed Ginny coldly and raised his wand slightly. Hearing Lin calling out his name, Riddle stopped pretending, and a black mist came out of Ginny's body, and Ginny's face became paler with the appearance of the black mist. Obviously, this strange black mist was draining Ginny's vitality. In just a few breaths, all the black mist left Ginny's body, and the diary in Ginny's arms slowly floated up under an unknown force, and was shrouded in the black mist. The black mist twisted, and finally turned into a young man with shiny black hair. The young man looked only about 16 years old. He was wearing a Slytherin wizard robe, and a silver prefect badge was shining on his chest. This young man was Tom Riddle's appearance when he separated this Horcrux. Riddle looked very handsome in his youth, with a sharp face. It was difficult for Lin to associate him with the 2-hole electrical socket Voldemort today. Although Riddle used the strange black mist to construct his own body after absorbing Ginny's vitality, Riddle's body was still just an energy aggregate, not a real entity. Riddle's body seemed to be translucent, and Lin and Irina could vaguely see that the diary was floating at the position of Riddle's heart. After Riddle condensed his own body, Ginny, who had already lost her consciousness, swayed on the spot and then fell down. Disarm you. Although he didn't have his own wand, Riddle still knew some simple magic wandless casting. Riddle shouted, and a red beam of light shot out from his finger, shooting towards Lin. This poor disarming spell naturally couldn't threaten Lin. Lin waved his wand, and an invisible barrier appeared in front of him, refracting the red beam to his left and back. Hiss hiss. However, Riddle's goal was not to defeat Lin, but just to interrupt Lin's rhythm of dealing with the basilisk. After sending out the disarming spell, he began to command the basilisk through Parseltongue. The basilisk, which was originally suppressed by the alchemy array, hissed again when Lin cast the armor spell. It swung its snake tail violently, shattering the golden beams of light that were shooting around it. Don't worry about that witch. Attack that Slytherin wizard, and interrupt the magic around him. At the same time, Riddle's order was also conveyed to the basilisk. The basilisk no longer paid attention to Irina's attack, but rushed towards Lin En. Seeing this scene, Lin En suddenly felt difficult. You know, the combat effectiveness of a wild magical animal and a magical animal tamed by a wizard and skilled in combat is very different. Riddle was like an external brain organ of the basilisk in this battle. Under Riddle's command, the basilisk suddenly became difficult to deal with. The basilisk, which could be easily pulled by the alternating attacks of Lin En and Irina, now attacked Lin En regardless of anything, which instantly broke the original advantageous situation. Lin En frowned, and while he kept retreating and controlling the alchemy array to block the basilisk, he had to beware of Riddle's sneak attack. I'll stop Riddle, you focus on dealing with the basilisk. Seeing that the basilisk had completely ignored her attack, Irina simply turned the gun head and attacked in the direction of Riddle. Irina shook her wand lightly, and 3 freezing spells were fired in a row towards Riddle. However, facing Irina's attack, Riddle stood there relaxedly, not even dodging. The 3 ice blue beams hit Riddle's abdomen, but passed through Riddle's body and flew out from behind Riddle. It's useless. As long as I want, I can change between the virtual and the real. Riddle sneered, and he raised his hand and attacked Irina with several disarming spells. Seeing this, Irina's face sank. Riddle is now like Peeves in Hogwarts Castle. When he wants to attack others, he turns into a physical entity, but when facing an attack, he can turn into a non-existent existence like a ghost. This weird ability is really hard to guard against. When the spell is ineffective against Riddle, Irina has to passively defend against the disarming spells that Riddle occasionally casts from time to time, and when Riddle sneak attacks Lin, she casts the armor spell on Lin in advance to resist Riddle's attack. Smash to pieces. On the other side, facing the rampaging basilisk, Lin mobilized a large amount of magic power in this crushing spell, just like he did last year when facing Quirrell. Although overloading the magic power would cause some irreparable damage to his wand and even his body, facing a difficult enemy like the basilisk, only this unexpected trick could have the possibility of winning. A grey-white beam of light as thick as an adult thumb broke through the air and hit the basilisk's snake scales fiercely. Great power can create miracles. Under the impact of huge magic power, even the snake scales of the basilisk with extremely high magic resistance were shattered under the bombardment of the crushing spell. Hiss hiss. The basilisk twisted in pain, and a quarter of its body had broken scales and bloody flesh. Black blood continued to ooze out from its wounds, and continued to splash in all directions as it struggled. Kill that wizard at all costs. Riddle gave a death order regardless of the basilisk's injuries. The basilisk hissed in pain. Although its instinct made it want to escape, it had to obey the order of the heir of Slytherin. It ignored its injuries, and continued to attack Lin. Under the desperate fighting style of the basilisk, Lin was finally approached by the basilisk. The basilisk twisted its body and swung its snake tail to hit Lin, sweeping Lin away. Puff. Under the huge impact, bright red blood flowed from the corner of Lin's mouth, and all the alchemical arrays around Lin were also shattered by the basilisk as he was blown away. Damn, it seems that magic alone is not enough. Irina, take it. Lin stood up, while enduring the severe pain from his body. He reached into the canvas bag with his right hand and a dirty hat flew towards Irina. Lin En looked at Irina and said in a low voice, "You are Gryffindor, you have to pull out the sword of Gryffindor." Taking the sorting hat thrown by Lin En, Irina nodded solemnly and then reached her right hand into the sorting hat, trying to pull out the sword of Gryffindor. But the next second Irina's expression froze, and she saw that the sorting hat was empty and there was no sword of Gryffindor at all. Why couldn't she pull out the sword of Gryffindor? Exclamation mark. Irina anxiously groped in the dirty sorting hat with her right hand, but no matter how she tried, she couldn't touch the legendary sword of Gryffindor. Chapter 138 Life and death are only a thought away. After finding that she couldn't pull out the Gryffindor sword, Irina was so anxious that she almost cried. When magic was difficult to work on the basilisk, the Gryffindor sword was one of the few weapons that could restrain the basilisk. Now that Lin was injured by the basilisk, she couldn't support Lin because she couldn't pull out the Gryffindor sword. How could she not be anxious? Exclamation mark. On the other side, Lin was also somewhat helpless. Although his alchemy array had a very high firing rate and strong power, it took time for him to refine the alchemy array. Obviously, neither the basilisk nor Riddle could give him this time. And the spell that he had just used exceeded his physical load, and it would be difficult to use it a second time in a short period of time, unless Lin really wanted to cripple himself. After dodging the attack of the basilisk, Lin's left hand ignited a black and red flame, which was his forbidden magic fire. Although the basilisk relies on physical attacks to fight, the forbidden magic fire cannot restrain the basilisk, but there is no way. Now Lin En has run out of tricks. In the absence of enough time to refine the alchemy array, the forbidden magic fire is his most powerful ability. The black and red flames exploded on the basilisk, constantly burning the broken flesh of the basilisk, which made the basilisk hiss in pain. but Riddle's death order for it to kill Lin En at all costs made it endure the pain and continue to chase Lin En. Damn it. At this time, Irina, who knew that she could not pull out the Gryffindor sword, put the sorting hat on the ground. She looked at Riddle not far away with fear of death. She understood that the change in the situation of this battle was brought about by Riddle. From the beginning to the end, their biggest threat was not the basilisk, but Tom Riddle. Irina fired a spell at Riddle while rushing towards Riddle. When approaching Riddle, Irina actually punched Riddle in the chest. Haha, have you already been so desperate that you foolishly use the muggle fighting method? Seeing Irina's actions, Riddle said with a sneer. As an energy body, he can switch between reality and illusion at will. Irina's actions seemed to him to be a desperate struggle. Riddle smiled confidently, and his figure swayed slightly, becoming transparent. And Irina's fist that hit Riddle also passed through his chest, failing to cause any harm to him. But, is this really the case? Exclamation mark. When the fist sank into Riddle's chest, Irina's mouth corners slightly raised, revealing a hint of smile. Wait, you're looking for death? Riddle suddenly opened his eyes wide, and he was eager to turn himself back into a physical body, but it was too late. Irina's hand that passed through Riddle's chest grabbed the diary located at his heart and pulled the diary out of Riddle's body. Although Riddle is an energy body that can change into an untouchable form, the Horcrux diary in his heart cannot. When Riddle switched to the state of nothingness, Irina snatched the notebook, which was still in a physical state, from his heart. Even if your life and death are only a thought away, the diary is a real object. Irina sneered and stepped back, and the Horcrux diary had already appeared in her hand. At this time, Riddle fell into anger. He roared and cast one spell after another at Irina. Damn witch, put the diary down. Irina kept dodging sideways, but her eyes were full of determination. She had lost the diary once, because of her carelessness, and even paid the price of her best friend being petrified. This time, she would never lose this diary again. Seeing that his spell could not hit Irina, Riddle calmed down. His eyes rolled around, and he seemed to think of something, and hissed again. On the other side, the basilisk that was originally biting Lin frantically, after hearing Riddle's parcel tongue, suddenly turned its gun around, and pounced on Irina, who was facing away from it, trying to bite off her head. At this time, Irina's attention was all on Riddle. She had no time to care about the basilisk behind her. She never thought that the basilisk would turn around and attack her at this time. Irina, be careful. Seeing this, Lin shouted hysterically. He forcibly extracted a large amount of magic power from the Philosopher's Stone and pointed the magic wand at the basilisk. A beam of light flashing with a sharp edge broke through the air and hit the basilisk's body before the basilisk pounced on Irina, causing the basilisk's position to shift by several centimeters. In the end, the basilisk hit Irina's left shoulder hard, knocking Irina away. Irina fell heavily to the ground, and inertia made her roll on the ground for several rounds, but no matter what, she still held the diary in her hand tightly. When Irina stood up, a trace of crimson appeared at the corner of her mouth. Disarm you. But before Irina could recover, a red beam of light hit her hard, sending her flying several meters. The wand in Irina's hand also flew out under the effect of the disarming spell, and was caught by Riddle. Holding Irina's wand, Riddle couldn't help but frown at the coolness coming from the wand. The material of this wand was something he had never seen before, and it seemed to be resisting his use. Unexpectedly, this wand and the little witch were 100% compatible. Except for some wands with unicorn hair as a core, most other wands, only those that were 100% compatible with their owners, would actively resist the use of outsiders when they fell into the hands of outsiders. If Irina's wand was used to cast a spell, the power of Riddle's spell would probably be weakened by 50%. But even so, the power of Riddle's spell could rival that of the elite auras of the Ministry of Magic. At this time, Riddle slowly raised his wand. With the help of the wand, he could also use some more powerful magic. Crucio. Riddle's expression became distorted. He waved his wand violently, and a chilling dark red ray shot towards Irina. Looking at the dark red light that was constantly enlarging in her field of vision, Irina was so scared that she fell to the side without hesitation and dodged Riddle's Cruciatus curse while falling to the ground. However, Riddle had no intention of stopping, and he cast a series of Cruciatus curses towards Irina. Irina dodged with difficulty. Although Tom Riddle only had the memory of Voldemort's student days, even so, Riddle with the wand was definitely not something she could deal with. Thanks to the book friend Cheyenne Kian Liu Xingwang for the 500 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. Chapter 139. It's your turn. You think that's neither human nor ghost. Even though Irina had tried her best to dodge, there was always a loophole. As Riddle cast the spell faster and faster, a dark red ray finally hit her. Irina only felt an unbearable pain coming from every corner of her body. She felt as if her flesh and blood were being torn apart, and her bones were broken one by one, as if someone was holding a heavy hammer. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Irina's forehead. Under the torture of the Cruciatus curse, she clenched her teeth and refused to make any sound. Seeing that his Cruciatus curse was successful, Riddle showed a cold smile. He walked over and stretched out his hand to take the diary from Irina's arms. However, he pulled it hard twice, but found that Irina was still holding the diary tightly, with no intention of letting go. Irina's stubbornness made Riddle a little surprised. You know, the pain of Cruciatus curse is unbearable even for those elite auras. Even those elite auras have to cry and beg for mercy when facing the torture of Cruciatus curse. And this little witch who is only in the 2nd grade actually has the strength to hold the diary when facing his Cruciatus curse. Cruciatus curse. Seeing that Irina refused to let go, Riddle's face showed a fierce look. He chanted the spell again and increased the output of power. At this time, Riddle was an energy body composed of the vitality extracted from Ginny. This also means that his magic power is used up a little bit, and there is no channel to replenish it. But in order to regain his body, Riddle didn't care so much. The more intense pain continued to stimulate Irina's nerves, making her moan involuntarily, but even though her consciousness became a little fuzzy, her hand holding the diary did not show any sign of loosening. She has made a mistake once, and she will never make the same mistake again. On the other side, Lin En, who was dealing with the basilisk, was furious when he found out that Irina was different. After 2 years of dealing with Irina, and the identities of the time travelers who confessed to each other this school year, Lin En had already regarded Irina as his most important good friend. But now his best friend was being tortured by the Cruciatus curse. How could he accept this? Exclamation mark. Thunder explosion. Lin En almost drawed out the spell. There seemed to be a faint light flashing on his right arm, and the magic power that exceeded the load rushed to his wand at a very fast speed. The magic power in the surrounding air seemed to begin to boil, and bloodlines appeared on Lin En's body. His skin cracked under the violent fluctuations of magic power, and many fine blood oozed out of his skin. The next moment, a huge beam of light with a diameter of more than 1 meter burst out from Lin En's wand and suddenly hit the head of the basilisk. A violent explosion sounded, and the basilisk's body, which was more than 10 meters long, was blown away by the terrifying explosion, and its snake scales were almost completely broken, and a large amount of black blood spilled all over the ground. The basilisk hit the stone pillar dozens of meters away heavily, and actually broke a stone pillar supporting the secret room in half. While knocking the basilisk away and buying time for himself, Lin En strode forward and picked up the sorting hat that Irina had placed on the ground. The suicide attack just now caused great trauma to Lin En's body. If Lin En continued like this, he might die suddenly before he could kill the basilisk, because he could not withstand the huge magic power. Therefore, the Gryffindor Holy Sword, which could break the basilisk's snake scales and even cut off the basilisk's flesh and blood when the basilisk's snake scales were broken, was undoubtedly the key to his breakthrough. Listen to me, sorting hat. I don't care about your so-called rule that only Gryffindor can take out the sword of Gryffindor, but now, give me the sword, or I will burn you. Lin's eyes were full of bloodshot. His left hand ignited a raging flame again, and pressed towards the sorting hat, while his right hand reached into the sorting hat without hesitation. After his right hand reached into the sorting hat, Lin felt that he touched a hard object. He grabbed the hard object, and pulled it out. This is a shining silver sword, and on the hilt of the silver sword, there is a dazzling egg-sized ruby. On the part of the silver sword near the hilt, there is also a name engraved, Godric Gryffindor. There is no doubt that this sharp silver sword is a legendary sword of Gryffindor. After seeing the sword of Gryffindor in Lin's hand, Riddle's eyes flashed with fear. He kicked Irina under his feet hard and tried to take the diary from Irina. In the thunderbolt explosion of Lin, the scales of the basilisk had already been shattered, and now Lin has obtained the Gryffindor sword. In this case, it is only a matter of time to kill the basilisk. As the heir of Slytherin and the soul of Voldemort in the Horcrux, Riddle clearly knows that the fangs of the basilisk can destroy his body. Therefore, he no longer has the intention to kill Lin and Irina. He just wants to take back his body and then use Ginny's only vitality to take his body away from this place of right and wrong and find a safe place for his body. In fact, if Tom Riddle had only learned the Cruciatus Curse and the Imperious Curse among the 3 unforgivable curses when he separated this Horcrux and had not yet learned the Killing Curse, otherwise he would have used the Killing Curse to kill Irina and take away the diary. Why would it be so troublesome? Exclamation mark. At this time, Lin switched the wand to his left hand, and his right hand was holding the Gryffindor sword. As Lin En waved the wand in his left hand, his pace was several times faster. In just a few breaths, he had already arrived in front of the basilisk dozens of meters away. A silent fluorescent spell was released, and the top of the wand was surrounded by a soft and warm light, which illuminated the entire appearance of the basilisk. Die! Lin En shouted angrily, and the sharp Gryffindor holy sword suddenly pierced into the basilisk's eye sockets, and pierced through the basilisk's eye sockets, and pierced the basilisk's head. Lin En kept twisting the Gryffindor holy sword in his hand, allowing the sharp silver sword to constantly stir the basilisk's head. After a few seconds, the silver sword was pulled out by Lin En, and then swung out suddenly. The huge force under the blessing of the spell actually directly cut off the basilisk's snake head with a diameter of nearly 2 meters. In this way, the basilisk that had lived in the Slytherin chamber for thousands of years died under Lin En's sword. Lin swung the Gryffindor sword again, and a fang as sharp as a dagger was cut off at the root. Lin dropped the Gryffindor sword in his hand, turned around and picked up the fang of the basilisk, and looked in the direction of Riddle with eyes full of anger. Next, it's your turn, you half-human half-ghost thing. Lin raised the fang in his hand and went in the direction of Riddle. Chapter 140. He didn't leave, did he? Exclamation mark. Seeing this, Riddle panicked. He kept casting the Cruciatus Curse on Irina, trying to force her to let go of the diary with a severe pain. However, he still failed. He underestimated her will. Even though Irina was somewhat unconscious under the torture of the Cruciatus Curse, she remembered to protect the diary from being taken away by Riddle. The knuckles of her fingers holding the diary had begun to turn white. Seeing Irina almost unconscious, but still holding the diary tightly, Lin's dark red eyes could not help but flash a trace of heartache. He ignored Riddle, who was shouting wildly on the side, and held a corner of the diary in Irina's arms with his left hand, while his right hand, which was holding the fangs of the basilisk, fiercely stabbed the fangs of the basilisk towards the diary. The next moment, a terrible, long-lasting, ear-piercing scream came from the diary. The sharp sound made the whole small square slightly shake. Under the influence of this sharp scream, Lin felt a sharp pain in his head, causing him to shake his body involuntarily. Irina, who was already somewhat unconscious due to the torture, fainted directly because of this. After the horrible scream disappeared, streams of ink gushed out of the diary, staining Irina's wizard robe black and covering the blood on her body. The energy body Riddle twisted and struggled, waving his arms constantly, and finally turned into a cloud of mist and exploded. The vitality that came from Ginny also returned to Ginny's body as the Horcrux was destroyed. Soon, Ginny, who had fallen to the ground like a corpse from the beginning, woke up slowly. She saw this gloomy small square, Lin and the unconscious Irina, and the serpent monster corpse with its head, separated in the distance. She screamed and tears flowed down. Irina. I'm sorry. Woo woo woo. Ginny thought Irina was dead, and she cried. Lin En stood up, and picked up the unconscious Irina in a princess hug. He released his magic power to explore Irina's body and soul. After sensing that Irina's body was only severely injured, but her soul was still safe, Lin En breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had refined those defensive all-chemical products in advance, which made Irina immune to the damage of the Cruciatus Curse to the soul, and even the damage of the Cruciatus Curse to Irina's body was largely resisted. Otherwise, with the weak body of Irina, a second-year witch, Irina might not be able to resist him to kill the basilisk, and would be tortured to death. Fool. Lin En said softly. He knew why Irina could wait until Lin En got the basilisk fangs before taking Riddle's diary, but she did it when Lin En was targeted by the basilisk. That was because the diary was Riddle's body. After being taken away by Irina, Riddle would certainly focus all his hatred on Irina and would have no time to take care of Lin, who was dealing with the basilisk. Riddle might even let the basilisk help him attack Irina so that Lin would have an easier battle. It can be said that Irina paid such a price to protect Lin from being attacked by the basilisk and Riddle. You are senior role? Why? At this time, Ginny saw Lin holding Irina, and she stuttered. Glancing at the crying Ginny, Lin said indifferently, "Follow me." As he said that, he held Irina and walked quickly in the direction they came from. Although Ginny was a little puzzled, she understood that this secret room was definitely not a place suitable for conversation. She gathered her wizard robes and followed behind Lin. After returning to the bottom of the pipe in the secret room, Lin En waved his wand, and the magic power of the Philosopher's Stone was extracted again. A powerful levitation spell was released, which made the three of them fly up in the air and fly along the pipe towards the bathroom. During the flight, Ginny noticed that the surface of Lin En's skin was still oozing blood. She was a little horrified, but she didn't dare to disturb Lin En. In fact, after many times of overloading the power of the Philosopher's Stone, Lin En's body had reached the limit of the limit. Although he only mobilized the magic power of the Philosopher's Stone within a reasonable range to cast the levitation spell, this not so strong magic still affected Lin En's damaged meridians, causing Lin En to suffer secondary trauma. But even so, Lin En still endured the pain in his body and cast a spell to return to the bathroom. He understood that, no matter how painful he was now, he was definitely not as painful as Irina, who was tortured by the Cruciatus curse just now. After returning to the bathroom, Lin En hugged Irina and walked quickly towards the school hospital. However, on the way to the school hospital, Lin ran into Professor McGonagall, who was patrolling the castle. "Mr. Rao and Miss Weasley? What happened to Miss Lovell? What happened?" Professor McGonagall looked at Lin's direction in surprise and said in an incredible tone. Lin said calmly, "Professor McGonagall, I need to send Irina to the school hospital first. As for what happened tonight, I will tell you the truth, okay?" Hearing this, although Professor McGonagall wanted to know what happened, she still understood the priorities of the matter. She nodded and escorted them to the school hospital. "Oh my god, this is the trace of the Cruciatus curse? What happened? Why did this innocent little girl suffer from the Cruciatus curse?" After checking Irina's injuries, Madame Pomfrey exclaimed. She said in disbelief. Hearing Madame Pomfrey's words, even Professor McGonagall, who had seen the world, could not control her emotions. The Cruciatus curse is one of the 3 unforgivable curses, and now, a little witch in Hogwarts Castle has been attacked by the unforgivable curse. How can she tolerate this? Exclamation mark. "Mr. Rowell, please tell me what happened. This is a very serious incident," Professor McGonagall said very seriously. At this time, after seeing Madame Pomfrey treating Irina with her own eyes, Lin finally breathed a sigh of relief and her face softened. Lin turned around and looked into Professor McGonagall's eyes. "I want to see Dumbledore, Professor. I will tell you the whole story." Professor McGonagall frowned and said, "Professor Dumbledore has been temporarily suspended by the school board and is not in the castle now." Hearing this, Lin chuckled and shook his head, saying lightly, "This kind of words can be used to deceive other students, Professor." Professor McGonagall opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but Lin interrupted her. In fact, he didn't leave, did he? Lin stared at Professor McGonagall's eyes and said so. "Thanks to book friend Chai and Qian Liu Xingwang for the reward of 4,600 book coins. Thank you for your support." Chapter 141. It's a Horcrux, right? Looking at Lin's red eyes and the blood on her skin that had not yet scabbed, Professor McGonagall was silent. After a long time, she nodded gently and said, "I'll go get Dumbledore." Professor McGonagall left, and Lin sat down tiredly, panting beside Irina's bed. Now Irina and Ginny are both receiving treatment from Madame Pomfrey, while Lin temporarily refuses treatment and waits for Dumbledore's arrival with her heavy body. As time goes by, the adrenaline that was previously caused by emotional excitement gradually subsides, and the pain from the body that Lin had ignored surges like a tide. Lin feels his eyelids getting heavier, and when he is about to close his eyes, the door of the school hospital is pushed open again. Dumbledore, with the Phoenix Forks standing on his shoulder, slowly walks to Lin, and Professor McGonagall follows Dumbledore. Lin. Dumbledore stammered. He didn't expect that Lin, who was always cautious and cherishing his life, would be so bold to break into the secret room with Irina today, and even kill the basilisk. As Lin guessed, Dumbledore did not really leave Hogwarts. He had been staying in Hogsmeade Village, which was closer to Hogwarts Castle, so that he could learn what happened in Hogwarts Castle as quickly as possible. Therefore, after Professor McGonagall contacted Dumbledore with an owl, Dumbledore asked Fawkes to take him back to the castle as quickly as possible. As the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Dumbledore learned about the injuries of Lin, Irina and Ginny the moment he returned to Hogwarts Castle. Considering the recent frequent attacks and the basilisk in Slytherin's secret room, it was not difficult for Dumbledore to guess what Lin and the others had done tonight. Minerva, could you please notify the other professors on patrol and ask them to wait for me in the principal's office? Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall beside him and said softly. Professor McGonagall nodded. She trusted Dumbledore very much and did not ask why Dumbledore did this. She turned around and left. After Professor McGonagall left, except for the unconscious Irina, only Lin and Dumbledore were left here. As for Madame Pomfrey, she had already left to prepare healing potions, and Ginny was arranged to a bed on the other side of the school hospital, and could not hear any sound here at all. Can you tell me everything that happened tonight, Lin? Dumbledore looked at Lin gently, and there seemed to be a light flashing in his blue eyes. Lin En nodded. He told Dumbledore everything that happened today, including how they borrowed the sorting hat, got Harry's parseltongue as a key, went to the Slytherin chamber to kill the basilisk, encountered Riddle's attack, and finally successfully killed the basilisk, and destroyed the diary. After listening to Lin En's story, Dumbledore pondered. After a while, Dumbledore asked softly, Lin En, but I see that you and Irina don't seem to be wearing the alchemical glasses that can resist the basilisk. How did you become immune to the basilisk's magic? Hearing this, Lin En chuckled and said, the alchemical glasses are too ostentatious. In the absence of the mastermind behind the scenes, we can only take some deceptive measures to win without attracting the attention of the mastermind behind the scenes. But unfortunately, we were still noticed by the mastermind behind the scenes. As he said, Lin En raised his hand and the contact lenses worn on his eyes were taken out by a magical power, and the two small lenses lay quietly in the palm of his hand. Presenting the alchemical glasses in such a hidden form? What a genius idea. After seeing the contact lenses in Lin's hand, Dumbledore couldn't help but exclaimed. He gently touched the two small lenses and praised. Lin said, Professor, you are too kind. This contact lens was invented by muggles 50 years ago. I just borrowed their ideas. Dumbledore nodded slightly and said, I'm very happy that you can accept the things of muggles instead of being blinded by the thoughts of purebloods. At this time, Dumbledore noticed the serious injuries on Lin's body. He said, you are also injured, Lin. I will ask Bobby to treat you. Wait. Lin stopped him, and he looked at Dumbledore seriously. Professor Dumbledore, what do you think the diary from Voldemort is? Dumbledore fell into deep thought again. He actually had a guess in his mind, but he was not sure. Perhaps it is a product of dark magic that we don't know about. Remember, we can't trust magic products that have their own thoughts, of course, except for the sorting hat. Dumbledore said so. Hearing this, Lin chuckled and asked, it's a Horcrux, right? Lin used a question, but his tone was full of certainty. Although Lin had no reason to know about Horcruxes, he was no longer willing to be timid. If Dumbledore could know this information in advance, perhaps many unnecessary sacrifices could be reduced later. Hearing Lin's words, Dumbledore, who was originally planning to turn around and look for Madame Pomfrey, froze in place. He looked at Lin again, a little surprised. Why are you? Before he could finish, Lin interrupted him and continued, I think my father's death that year may also be related to Voldemort's Horcruxes. Dumbledore was stunned. Is Hindler's death also related to Voldemort's Horcruxes? Exclamation mark. Recalling the boy who was from Slytherin, but had a sunny temperament, Dumbledore could not help but be absent-minded. Hindley was killed by Voldemort for some reason, and the last message he conveyed to the Order of the Phoenix before his death was related to his outing with Regulus Black. Regulus Black found me and wanted to take me to a place where there were weapons that could defeat Voldemort. This was all Hindley left before his death. As for Hindley's so-called weapons that could defeat Voldemort, Dumbledore had pondered for a long time, but could not come up with any results. But now, Lin destroyed the diary that was Voldemort's Horcrux, and proposed that Hindley's death was related to the Horcrux, which forced Dumbledore to link the so-called weapon with the Horcrux. Chapter 142. Don't worry, I'm here. Destroying Voldemort's Horcrux is indeed the key to killing Voldemort. So it seems that the weapon that Henry said could defeat Voldemort might be Voldemort's Horcrux. And the place where Regulus Black was going to take Henry might be the place where Voldemort's Horcrux was stored. Thinking of this, Dumbledore suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He seemed to have sensed some key information. Voldemort has more than one Horcrux. You should have guessed it. At this moment, Lin spoke lightly, bringing Dumbledore back to his senses from his wild thoughts. Dumbledore looked at Lin deeply. He didn't expect that Lin, as a third-year wizard, could analyze so many useful things from these few clues. Dumbledore sighed in his heart. Maybe he was really old. Professor, I hope you can investigate the truth of my father's death. Maybe there is the key to defeating Voldemort. Lin looked at Dumbledore seriously and asked. Dumbledore nodded slightly, looked at Lin En with complicated eyes, and said, I will, Lin En. But now, you should rest. Dumbledore leaned down and gently stroked Lin En's blood-stained black hair, looking like a kind elder. After getting Dumbledore's promise, Lin En's goal was achieved. So, he no longer controlled the fatigue that surged like a tide, closed his eyelids, and fainted. After Lin En fainted, Dumbledore stood up, and his eyes were very complicated when he looked at Lin En. Please, Fawkes. Dumbledore said softly. Fawkes called out crisply, flew down from Dumbledore's shoulder, and came to Lin En's side. Fawkes' eyes became moist, and soon, drops of crystal clear tears dripped from the corners of Fawkes' eyes, and kept falling into Lin En's mouth. After about 10 drops of phoenix tears were dripped into Lin En's mouth, Fawkes flew back to Dumbledore's shoulder. As the most powerful white wizard of this century, even Dumbledore, who was even called the White Lord, how could he not see the physical condition of Lin En at this time? Exclamation mark. The moment he saw Lin En in the school hospital, Dumbledore was sure that Lin En had overloaded the power of the Philosopher's Stone. In his eyes, Lin En's body was like a candle in the wind, and had long been destroyed by the huge magic power. This serious injury may not be completely cured, even if it is sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Diseases. If it is not cured, even if Lin En can recover in the future, his magic foundation will probably be seriously injured. In this case, his magic talent will be greatly reduced, and he will become a mediocre wizard. At worst, he will lose his magic foundation, and become a squib despised by the wizarding world. Perhaps with Lin En's own resistance, his magic strength will at most decrease, and his magic power will no longer increase for life. But Dumbledore didn't want to see a good boy who worked hard for the school end up like this. Since the phoenix tears that could cure Lin's injuries were within his reach, he would naturally help Lin heal his injuries. Soon, the phoenix tears took effect. The wounds on Lin's skin scabbed quickly, and his pale face gradually became ruddy, and his right arm, which was a little fragmented under the excessive magic power of the Philosopher's Stone, was gradually healing. Lin, who was originally the most seriously injured among the three, became the least injured among the three with the help of phoenix tears. A faint snoring sound sounded, and Lin seemed to fall into a stable sleep. Dumbledore gently waved his wand, and Lin's body floated up, and then slowly landed on the bed next to Irina's bed. After doing all this, Dumbledore found Madame Pomfrey, and asked her to help treat Lin before leaving. After an unknown amount of time, Irina groaned and opened her ice blue eyes. Although the trauma caused by the Cruciatus curse had been healed, her stimulated muscles still twitched again and again when she tried to get up. Awake. A soft voice came from her ear. Irina turned her head and saw Lin En sitting on the bed, holding a book in his hand, smiling at her. After seeing the surrounding environment clearly, Irina understood that Lin En succeeded. He successfully killed the basilisk and destroyed the diary and took her out of the secret room. Irina twisted her body uncomfortably and asked in a low voice, "How long have I slept?" Lin En reached out and stroked Irina's tangled hair and said gently, 5 days. Today is the weekend. I guess Harry and the others will come to see you soon. As early as the second day, after he fell into a coma, Lin En woke up. After waking up, he found that his body was in a very healthy state. He knew his physical condition before he fell into a coma, so he also knew what Dumbledore had done for him. Phoenix tears? After waking up, Lin En murmured, knowing that he had judged others by his own standards. As the guardian of Hogwarts, Dumbledore would protect any young wizard who went to school at Hogwarts, instead of disregarding the lives of students for a prophecy as he imagined. Although Lin En had recovered roughly after waking up, his bloody appearance the night before made Madame Pomfrey really worried, so he was required to stay in the school hospital for a week for observation. So, Lin En asked his Slytherin friend Irving Farley, who was his partner in every potion class, to bring him his alchemy books from the dormitory, so that he could use these alchemy books to kill time in the school hospital. In this way, time soon came to Saturday, the day Irina woke up. As for Ginny Weasley, she left the hospital ward the morning after they arrived at the hospital ward. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley also came to Hogwarts Castle on the morning of that day and confronted Lucius Malfoy, who also came to Hogwarts Castle. At that time, Harry happened to come to the principal's office to ask about Irina. After seeing the destroyed diary that Dumbledore personally brought back from the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets, Harry immediately identified the diary as Lucius Malfoy stuffed into Ginny's cauldron. After hearing Harry's testimony, the Weasleys wanted to kill Lucius with a curse on the spot. Fortunately, Dumbledore stopped the two in time, which prevented them from doing stupid things. Unfortunately, there was only Harry's one-sided statement at the time, and there was no real evidence, so they had no way to deal with Lucius, and could only let Lucius leave. However, after seeing Dobby being released from the Royal Manor by Gale, and returning to Lucius, Harry had an idea, and put his stinky socks in the diary, inducing Lucius to throw the socks out, which were caught by Dobby, allowing Dobby to regain his freedom. Is that so? After learning from Lin En what happened in the castle during the days when she was unconscious, Irina nodded slightly and rubbed her eyes sleepily. If you are still tired, sleep for a while. Lin En's eyes were full of tenderness. Don't worry, I'm here. Under Lin En's gaze, Irina still couldn't bear the sleepiness and fell asleep again. Thanks to the book friend Yun Mo Dankson for the 400 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Shadowless Divine Sharpness. Another day passed. Although Irina had woken up, her injuries had not yet fully recovered, so she had to stay in the school hospital for treatment. Lin En was approved by Madame Pomfrey to be discharged from the hospital and was able to return to normal campus life. Perhaps I need more strength. After returning to the dormitory, Lin En sat in the empty dormitory and talked to himself. Originally, he thought he was strong enough, relying on more than 300 alchemy array tactics per second to deal with most enemies, but now he knows that he is wrong. Indeed, with Lin En's alchemy level applied to the battle, even the entire Aura office can't find a few who can fight him. However, the danger never comes from the majority, but from the negligible minority. In fact, the so-called power of Lin En does not refer to magic power. After all, with the authority of the demon god in the magic stone as energy, the magic power that Lin En can burst out at one time can even rival that of a demon king level wizard. But if there is no powerful spell that can exert the power that matches the magic power, then the magic power alone is not enough to reverse the situation. I need some powerful spells. Even black magic doesn't matter. Lin En whispered softly, his fists clenched. He used to think that the alchemy array was enough to deal with all battles, and there was no need for those black magics that would affect his mind, but after the battle with the basilisk, he figured it out. If he had mastered the fiend fire in the Slytherin chamber, then the moment Irina took the diary, he could have used the fiend fire to destroy the diary, making everything simpler, instead of watching her suffer the torture of the Cruciatus curse like that night, but could do nothing. In fact, he had countless opportunities to come into contact with spells that could enhance his own strength, but he chose comfort. People are born in trouble and die in comfort. In the first 2 years at Hogwarts Castle, Lin En had a very smooth life, so smooth that he, who was originally cautious in everything, relaxed in the face of a stable life. If I remember correctly, in Professor Snape's textbook, when he was a student, there is a record of a black magic with extremely high lethality. Lin stood up and walked out of the dormitory. According to his memory of the original book, the Half-Blood Prince's potion textbook was obtained by Harry in the 6th grade, so the book should still be stored in the senior potion classroom at this time. The Slytherin dormitory is not far from the underground classroom, where the senior potion classroom is located. After all, both are in the basement of Hogwarts Castle. This day is Sunday, all professors and students are on vacation, and the basilisk has been killed. The crisis of Hogwarts Castle has been resolved, and the professors no longer patrol the castle day and night, so the corridor, where the potion classroom is located, is empty. Allahu open. Lin came to the empty senior potion classroom, and opened the door of the classroom with the unlocking spell. After entering the classroom, Lin En went straight to a storage cabinet in the corner of the classroom. In the storage cabinet were placed some potion materials needed for potion classes, some tools such as scales, used to process materials, and some tattered old textbooks. Lin En took out all these old textbooks and quickly searched through them. Soon, he saw a line of small words at the bottom of the back cover of Advanced Potion Making written by Labasho Parlach. This book belongs to the Half-Blood Prince. After seeing this line of small words, Lin En's face lit up. He stuffed the book into his pocket and prepared to leave. Before leaving the classroom, Lin En did not forget to put the book he had taken out back into the locker. Lin En returned to the dormitory and took out the Half-Blood Prince's potion textbook and flipped through it. Lin En could see Snape's notes on the potion formulas and production processes when he was a student on almost every page of the textbook. These wonderful ideas made Lin En have to admit that Snape was indeed a potion genius when he was a student. However, Lin En's purpose was not these potion notes, but the spells invented by Snape recorded in the book. At first, Lin En saw some prank spells, such as the evil spell, that could make the toes of the cursed person grow wildly, the evil spell, that could make the tongue of the cursed person stick to the upper palate, and the ear-closing spell that could fill the ears of everyone around with an indistinguishable buzzing sound after being released. In addition, in the corner of the last page of the textbook, a spell was written in scribbled notes. This spell seemed to have been scribbled and revised countless times, and finally a few words appeared. Upside down fuchsia, silent. In addition to the spell of the upside down fuchsia, the method of casting the spell to remove the spell of the golden bell falling to the ground was also recorded here. This is a good thing. Lin En kept the casting technique of the upside down fuchsia in mind. The upside down fuchsia is a spell with extremely strong control ability, but low casting difficulty. You must know that Harry in the original book only read this spell once and cast it smoothly. In addition, the hanging bell has a strong concealment. It does not require wizards to practice silent casting skills. It is a silent spell in itself. After flipping through the book, Lin En turned it over again from the beginning. This time he read it more carefully. Sure enough, in a blank space in the textbook, he saw a spell, God's Sharp Shadow. In addition to this spell, Lin En also saw 3 words to the enemy below. Finally found it. Lin En's brows relaxed, and he recited the spell softly. In Lin En's eyes, the power of God's Sharp Shadow is second only to the 3 unforgivable spells and the Fierce Fire spell. If a wizard is hit by God's Sharp Shadow, without a counterspell, the part cut off by God's Sharp Shadow will not be able to regenerate by any means, and the wound will never heal. If the spell that Lin En used to cast the basilisk on the basilisk by forcibly extracting the magic power of the Philosopher's Stone when he exploded, that night was not the explosion spell, but the shadowless spell, I'm afraid Lin En wouldn't have to draw out the Gryffindor sword. The shadowless spell alone would have been able to split the basilisk in half. This shadowless spell seemed to Lin En to be almost perfect black magic. It had little effect on the mind of the caster, but its power was far greater than most black magic. If one had to point out its shortcomings, perhaps it was that the textbook did not record its counterspell. However, this shortcoming was not a shortcoming for Lin En at all. After all, the Half-Blood Prince clearly wrote in the textbook that this spell was used against the enemy, and when facing the enemy, it was naturally a situation of life and death, and Lin En didn't need the so-called counterspell at all. I was so tired. I spent almost an hour reading the original book for the line of words below the shadowless spell that I remembered. I spent an hour reading it, just for the 3 words against the enemy. In the original book, Harry got the book in chapter 9, but he didn't see the God of Swords until chapter 21. I'm really upset. Who in my family understands? I'm really speechless. I'm going to read the book. Chapter 144. You're not trying to pick me up, are you? In the following week, Lin went to class according to the schedule during the day, and at night, after the Malfoy trio fell asleep, he left the Slytherin dormitory with the disillusionment charm and went to the room of requirement to practice the sharpshooter charm. When Lin walked past the wall in front of the room of requirement 3 times in a row and silently said, "I need a place to practice spells," the room of requirement would transform into a training ground the size of a basketball court, and there were a large number of movable and stationary dummies in the training ground. These dummies were made by the magic of Hogwarts Castle itself, and they were endless. Even if Lin used the sharpshooter charm to chop off the heads of all the dummies in the training ground, new dummies would suddenly appear in every corner of the empty field within a few seconds. During the week of practicing spells in the room of requirement, Lin said more than once that he felt like he had missed a billion. You know, these training dummies not only have fixed targets, but also some moving targets that are comparable to Professor Green's. These moving targets are difficult for Lin to hit, even when he uses spells to shoot. If he had known that the training ground in the room of requirement was so powerful, he should have come here to practice spells 2 years ago. In addition, Lin would visit Irina in the school hospital every day. Under Madame Pomfrey's treatment, Irina's face was no longer as pale as it was at the beginning, but became more rosy. Just like that, another weekend came. And on this day, Lin got good news. That is, Irina was discharged from the hospital. Her body no longer twitched because of other people's touch or large movements, and the sequelae of the Cruciatus curse had basically disappeared. To celebrate Irina's discharge from the hospital, Lin sneaked to Hogsmeade Village a day in advance and bought dozens of Irina's favorite desserts at Honeydukes. "Congratulations on your recovery." Lin stuffed a large bag of desserts into Irina's arms and said with a smile. Irina took the dessert with surprise, and her face was also filled with smiles. "Honeydukes snacks? Great. Thank you, Lin." 2 weeks of lying in bed was driving her crazy. Fortunately, Lin and Harry's trio came to visit her every day and chat with her, which allowed her to hold on until now. Lin laughed and said, "Put the snacks back in the dormitory, and we will sneak out for a drink later. How about it?" Irina was stunned and asked, "Drinking?" But Madame Pomfrey said that I must eat normally during this period to facilitate subsequent treatment. Lin smiled and said, "Not drinking, but tea. I heard from the seniors in Slytherin that Madame Puddifoot's tea house in Hogsmeade Village tastes pretty good." Hearing Lin's words, Irina's hand holding the dessert trembled, and then she seemed to choke and coughed several times in succession. "Madame Puddifoot's tea house? Are you talking about the legendary dating place for lovers?" Irina looked at Lin En in disbelief. "Lin En, you are not going to take the opportunity to pick me up, are you?" Lin En said helplessly, "Don't make a fuss. You know there is only one tea house in Hogsmeade Village, or you can name a place. There are many places to drink in Hogsmeade Village, but there is only one tea house, Madame Puddifoot's tea house. Other places, such as the Three Broomsticks and the Hog's Head, are mainly engaged in alcoholic products." Hearing this, Irina thought about it and found that there was nothing wrong with what Lin En said, so she nodded and agreed. After fighting the basilisk and staying in the school hospital for 2 weeks, it would be nice to go out and relax for a day. Although she was not ready for a date, she was still happy to just drink a cup of tea. So, Irina put the dessert sent by Lin En back to her dormitory, and then followed Lin En out of Hogwarts Castle through the secret passage of the one-eyed witch statue. At the other end of the secret passage was Honeydukes' cellar. When they came out of Honeydukes, Lin bought Irina a rainbow lollipop. On the way to Madame Puddifoot's tea house, Irina followed Lin happily with a lollipop in her mouth. After walking for about 10 minutes, Lin and Irina found Madame Puddifoot's tea house on the corner of a street. This was a tea house that looked a bit small and cramped. The tea house was steaming, and everything inside was decorated with tacky lace, even the small round tables. Many of the decorations in the tea house were quite girlish, but for 21st century otakus like Lin and Irina, it was so embarrassing that they wanted to dig out a 2-bedroom 1-living room with their feet. Walking into the tea house, Lin and Irina saw many men and women sitting in pairs in this small tea house, and some bold couples were even kissing passionately in ecstasy. Seeing this scene, Irina, who knew she was only here for tea, blushed inexplicably. "Excuse me, what do you need?" After Lin and Irina found a seat in a corner and sat down, Mrs. Puddifoot came to them and asked kindly. Lin glanced at the menu on the table. In addition to tea, the menu also included coffee and other drinks. "I want a cappuccino, thank you," Lin said politely. After hearing Lin's choice of coffee, Irina followed up with a sentence. "I also want a cappuccino, the same as his, thank you." Hearing Irina's words, Mrs. Puddifoot immediately showed an expression of an experienced person. She nodded to Irina encouragingly, and then walked towards the kitchen. At this time, Irina also came back to her senses. After recalling Mrs. Puddifoot's encouraging look, she couldn't help blushing. "What was I talking about just now?" Exclamation mark. "Just order a cappuccino, why add a sentence the same as his?" Exclamation mark. Seeing Irina's embarrassment, Lin En wanted to tell some jokes to break the awkward atmosphere between the two. "Irina, do you know why cappuccino is called cappuccino?" Irina was stunned and asked curiously. Why?" Lin En said seriously, "Because Kilo's headscarf is too small, he got stuck and couldn't get out, so it's called cappuccino." Hiss. After listening to Lin En's cold joke, Irina felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar. Even when she was locked in a cold storage in her previous life and couldn't get out, it was probably not as cold as it is now. Irina lay on the table and said weakly, "You said it very well, don't say it next time." Seeing that Irina seemed to be broken, Lin En scratched his head. "Please give me rewards and monthly tickets." Chapter 145 How I wish time would be frozen in an instant. Soon, Mrs. Puddifoot placed 2 cups of cappuccino on the table in front of Lin and Irina respectively. The surface of the fragrant cappuccino's milk foam was decorated with a heart pattern with cocoa powder. Irina picked up the coffee cup and sipped it in small sips, trying to hide her embarrassment. Looking at Irina who was drinking cappuccino with her head down, Lin's eyes became softer. The warm sunlight shone through the window not far away and fell on the girl's snow-white long hair, and the girl's smart ice blue eyes made this small tea house even warmer. "How I wish time would be frozen in an instant forever," Lin murmured softly. He lowered his head and glanced at the cocoa powder with the heart pattern in the cup. For a moment, he couldn't bear to destroy it. His dark red eyes, as weak as candlelight, seemed to become brighter at this moment. "What are you talking about?" Irina didn't hear Lin's murmur clearly. She tilted her head cutely. "Why don't you drink it? Could it be that your cold jokes make you unable to look directly at the cappuccino?" Seeing this, Lin couldn't help but smile softly, reached out and ruffled Irina's hair, and then drank the cappuccino in the cup contentedly. "Ouch, what are you doing?" Irina exclaimed, and quickly covered her hair and straightened it again. "If you do this again, I will be angry," Lin En said jokingly. "Irina, do you know which animal in the world is the quietest when it is angry?" Hearing Lin En's sudden question, Irina was a little confused, and she shook her head honestly. "What? I don't know." Lin En spread his hands and said, "It's the gorilla." Irina was even more puzzled, and she subconsciously touched her chin. "Why? Are you implying something to me?" Lin En made a gesture of hammering his chest with both fists, and then said seriously, "Because when gorillas are angry, they will knock their breasts." Hiss. Irina's teeth trembled, and she felt that the clothes on her body were still too thin. "Just kill me." Irina lay on the table again, looking like she had lost all hope in life. Don't mind. Lin En poked her head. I'll give you something good. What good thing? Irina sat up straight and recovered. Lin En took out a worn-out potions textbook from his pocket and handed it to Irina. This book belongs to the Half-Blood Prince. Irina saw the words on the back cover. She subconsciously read it out and then showed a look of surprise. It's Professor Snape's textbook when he was a student. Lin En smiled and nodded, saying, yes, I found this in the senior potions classroom last week. I have learned all the spells in it, so I'll give this book to you. It just so happens that your potions class is your weak point. You can use it to make up for your potions. As early as last year's final exam, Lin En noticed that Irina's potions class grades were not particularly good, just like he was not good at herbal medicine. Therefore, since he could get full marks in the potions class exam, he naturally decided to give this book to Irina, who needed it more. Okay. Irina's cute face was filled with a smile. I will also help you with her biology in the future. I remember that your grades in her biology were not very ideal. Last year, she received many help from Lin En, and she subconsciously paid attention to Lin En's grades when the final grades were announced. Lin En smiled and nodded. Soon, the cappuccino in the 2 cups was finished, and Lin En stood up to pay the bill. After leaving Madame Puddifoot's tea house, Lin En and Irina walked back to the direction of the secret passage. On the street of Hogsmeade Village, Lin En and Irina held hands involuntarily. From a distance, their backs were no different from those of the couples in Hogsmeade Village. When they returned to Hogwarts Castle, the sun was about to set. Irina said goodbye to Lin En with a smile and returned to the Gryffindor common room, while Lin En thought for a while and walked towards the direction of the headmaster's office. It has been 2 weeks since the basilisk incident, and he has not seen Dumbledore since he was discharged from the hospital. Not long after, Lin En arrived outside the principal's office. Looking at the stone statue guarding the door, Lin En took out the long list from his pocket again, ready to read it out one by one like last time. However, before he could speak, the stone statue actually made way for him. Lin, do you have anything to do with me? Lin En looked up and saw Dumbledore with a kind smile on his face, looking at him on the steps leading to the principal's office. Lin En nodded slightly and said, yes, Professor. Dumbledore waved his hand, motioning Lin En to follow him. Lin En followed him and walked into the principal's office with Dumbledore along the spiral staircase. It was evening, and in the portraits on the walls of the principal's office, the past principals had not yet rested. They were curiously looking at Lin En, the little wizard who came to the principal's office. What would you like to drink? Dumbledore waved his wand, and a porcelain cup appeared in front of Lin En. Lin said softly, just warm water, Professor. He hoped that the rich aroma of cappuccino could stay in his taste buds for a little longer, instead of letting other drinks affect its taste. Dumbledore tapped Lin's porcelain cup with his wand, and the steaming water filled the cup. Lin sat down in front of the headmaster's desk. He saw that the sorting hat that he had abandoned in the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets was now lying safely on the table, and the silver sword inlaid with rubies was also placed on the other side of the table. After you told me about the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets, I went there in person and brought them back. Noticing Lin's gaze, Dumbledore said with a smile. Lin nodded, and then a question popped up in his mind, and he asked, by the way, Professor, does it mean that whether the sword of Gryffindor can be pulled out of the sorting hat does not depend on who pulls the sword, but on the will of the sorting hat? Dumbledore shook his head gently and said, no, Lin, the sorting hat is the hat of Godric Gryffindor, one of the founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. It is subject to the rules of Gryffindor. Even if the sorting hat is willing, it can never allow anyone other than a true Gryffindor to pull out the sword of Gryffindor. Lin was a little puzzled, but I just threatened the sorting hat with fire that day, and I successfully pulled out the sword of Gryffindor. Professor, I'm obviously Slytherin. Before Lin could finish, Dumbledore interrupted him with a smile. If you can pull out the sword of Gryffindor, it means you are a true Gryffindor, or you have the good qualities of Gryffindor at the moment you draw the sword. Chapter 146. We can't wait until tragedy happens before we regret it. Dumbledore's words were somewhat unexpected to Lin. He was a real Gryffindor. How could that be possible? Exclamation mark. Dumbledore continued, at first, Irina was unable to draw out the sword of Gryffindor. Perhaps because when she tried to draw out the sword, her purpose was only to kill the basilisk. And when you tried to draw out the sword, Lin, your purpose might not only be to kill the basilisk, but also to protect her, right? Hearing this, Lin was silent. As Dumbledore said, at that time, as a Slytherin, he tried to draw out the sword of Gryffindor because he wanted to use the power of the sword of Gryffindor to protect her and prevent her from continuing to suffer from the torture of the Cruciatus curse. At that time, your purpose was no longer pure use, but protection, wasn't it? Gryffindor has the courage buried in their hearts. Their courage, spirit, and generosity make Gryffindor stand out. And you at that time had the courage to protect others regardless of your own life, and the courage to risk your life, wasn't it? At that time, you could be said to be a real Gryffindor. Dumbledore said happily, and his eyes looking at Lin were full of praise for the younger generation. Lin nodded, and he fell into deep thought. He recalled the scene when he had just arrived at Hogwarts Castle and participated in the sorting ceremony. At that time, the sorting had told him that he had the characteristics of the 4 major colleges at the same time. He had courage, loyalty, wisdom, and ambition that others could not match. Although he eventually went to Slytherin, no one could say that he was not Gryffindor, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, because the qualities possessed by the students of these 3 colleges can be reflected in Lin. Perhaps, Irina, who also waited 2.5 minutes to get the result of the sorting ceremony last year, had the same reason as him. Irina may not be a pure Gryffindor either. At least, Lin En can see some Slytherin qualities in her. By the way, Lin En, Dumbledore's tone became more cheerful. The body of the basilisk is still in Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. That is your trophy. Hearing this, Lin En's eyes lit up. After 2 weeks, he almost forgot about the body of the basilisk. You know, even the snake skin shed by the basilisk has a very high alchemical value, let alone the basilisk itself. Exclamation mark. If the body of the basilisk can be used as an alchemical material, Lin En is even sure to replicate the basilisk's instant death magic and petrification magic. Lin En thought that Dumbledore had dealt with the basilisk long ago, but he didn't expect that the other party would leave it to him. After all, strictly speaking, the basilisk belongs to Hogwarts property. Thank you, Professor, Lin En said with gratitude. If there is nothing else, I think you can go and enjoy your dinner. Dumbledore glanced at the darkening sky outside the window, winked at Lin En, and said. However, Lin En did not get up and leave as he thought, but looked at him solemnly. Lin En said in a deep voice, I want to learn the fiery curse, Professor. Yes, learning the fiery curse is the real purpose of Lin En's trip. They chatted for so long before, just to reveal the truth at this moment. Hearing this, Dumbledore's expression became solemn, but he did not refute Lin's words immediately. Instead, he asked softly, can you tell me why, Lin? Lin said lightly, the Fiendfy can destroy Horcruxes, Professor. If I had mastered the Fiendfy spell that night, I would have been able to destroy the diary directly. In that way, perhaps she would not have suffered unnecessary harm. And Professor, you know, I have a special talent for affinity with the element of fire. I can control all flames with ease, including anything in the form of flames. I think I'm sure that the Fiendfy I release will not get out of control. Lin's eyes became sincere, and he said softly. Dumbledore stared at Lin En quietly. After Lin En finished speaking, he said seriously, but, Lin En, you must know that the fiery curse is an extremely evil black magic. It not only has the power to affect the minds of wizards, but also backfires on those who release it. Many wizards died because of the fiery curse. If you learn the fiery curse and abuse those black magics, your mind will gradually become dark. Everything you cherish may be destroyed by your own hands because you touched the taboo that should not be touched. Dumbledore's tone became low, and he seemed to think of something bad. But, Professor, I can control it, just like I can control those magic flames freely. Lin En argued, and when he raised his hand, a ball of magic flame jumped on his fingertips like a flame elf, and even playfully flicked the porcelain cup in front of Lin En. Dumbledore said lightly, but it is dark magic, Lin. I will not teach my students dark magic, no matter how powerful and controllable this dark magic is. Lin, there is more than one way to destroy a Horcrux. The fangs of a basilisk can also destroy a horcrux, right? Lin smiled, and his tone became a little gloomy. The fangs of a basilisk are just external objects after all, not our own power. Maybe the fiery curse is a double-edged sword, but it allows us to protect the people we cherish. Professor, you shouldn't let us lose the sword that can protect ourselves. Dumbledore said softly. You also said that it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? It may stab yourself and leave you covered in wounds. We don't need a sword that will hurt ourselves, although it can sometimes allow you to defeat powerful enemies. Lin stood up. He looked at Dumbledore sitting opposite him, and his tone became more intense. But Professor, you have to know that having no sword in your hand and having a sword in your hand but not using it are completely different. We can't wait until the tragedy has happened and then regret it. Hearing Lin's words, Dumbledore's eyes seemed to dim. After a while, Dumbledore also stood up, and he said in an unquestionable tone, but this is Hogwarts, Lin. As a professor, I will not teach the dark magic to my students. If your purpose is to learn the fiery curse, then I'm sorry. Please allow me to refuse. Please go back. You should enjoy your dinner. Hearing this, a hint of disappointment flashed in Lin's dark red eyes. If this is your decision, then, okay. Lin nodded gently, turned and left the principal's office. Behind the principal's desk, looking at the principal's office door that was closed again, Dumbledore showed a self-deprecating smile. Tragedy, huh? But his tragedy is precisely because of that thoughtless choice. Please give me rewards and monthly tickets. Chapter 147. If one's virtue does not match his position, disaster will surely follow. Although Lin En did not learn the fiendish flint curse as he wished after this conversation with Dumbledore, he was not discouraged. As we all know, next year, which is Harry's third year at Hogwarts, will be the safest year in the past 7 years at Hogwarts Castle. Even the identity of the final boss is Harry's godfather, so in the next school year, the shadowless divine blade will be enough for Lin En and Irina to use. Before Voldemort's resurrection, Lin En had a long time to find a way to learn the fiendish flint curse, and he didn't have to hang himself on Dumbledore's tree. After enjoying the dinner, Lin En took the time to go to the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets, put all the bodies of the basilisk in a bag cast with the traceless stretching charm, and then went back to the dormitory to rest early. After the class on the second day, Lin En and Irina met again in the room of requirement. After the experience of drinking tea in Madame Puddifoot's tea house yesterday, Lin gradually fell in love with the quiet and leisurely atmosphere of the tea house. Therefore, when entering the room of requirement, Lin no longer silently said I need a place to hold a meeting, but I need a place to sit down and chat and drink tea. So, after Lin and Irina entered the room of requirement, they found themselves in a small tea house. Although it was very small, the warm light cast from the top gave people an inexplicable sense of warmth. The final exams are coming soon. Now that the basilisk is dead, the deceitful Lockhart is still alive and well in the castle. I think we need to get the plot back on track. Lin said so. In the original book, Lockhart was forced by Harry and Ron to explore the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets. After entering the Chamber of Secrets, Lockhart snatched Ron's wand and used the Oblivion Charm on them. Unexpectedly, Ron's broken wand caused his Oblivion Charm to rebound, which made Lockhart himself an idiot, and what he did was also exposed by Harry. But now, the basilisk has long been killed by Lin and Irina, but Lockhart, the fraudster, is still alive and well, and even proudly shows off his deeds stolen from other people's memories every day. Whether Lockhart is exposed or not should have little to do with what happens next, right? Irina said with some doubts. In her opinion, Lockhart is an idiot who can't even use the disarming charm. Even if he is allowed to jump around, it is estimated that he will not cause much trouble. Lin chuckled and shook his head, saying, Irina, you underestimate the power of public opinion. Lockhart is not a small name in the British wizarding world. If he is controlled by Voldemort in the future and used by Voldemort, then under his influence, many originally neutral wizards may stand against us. If one's talent is not worthy of his position, he will suffer. If one's virtue is not worthy of his position, he will suffer disaster. Don't forget what kind of disasters Fudge caused by his stupid actions in the later plot of the original book. If Lockhart is allowed to continue to deceive the world and steal his reputation, Perhaps the disaster he caused is not less than fudges. Lin said lightly, and there seemed to be light flowing in his dark red eyes. Irina recalled the series of stupid things Fudge had done in the original book that she had read, and then thought of the idiot Lockhart in the castle. Now, she sincerely believed that Lin was right. However, since we have already let the plot deviate from the right track, now we have to turn it back ourselves. Irina put her index finger under her lips and lowered her head to think. Lin En spread his hands and said, in fact, to put it bluntly, we should use our foresight to change the plot that is not in our favor, and for the plot that is in our favor, we should try our best to get it back on track and get through it safely. We have to change the plot, but we can't deviate from it completely. This state of being close and distant is the most beneficial to us. Irina nodded as if she understood. Although she didn't fully understand what he meant, it was always right to listen to him. Then what should I do next? Irina asked softly. Lin En thought for a while, and then told Irina his plan of action. The final exam is next week, so let's take action this weekend. At that time, I will. Lin En briefly explained what Irina had to do, and Irina also carefully recorded it in her mind. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye it was the weekend. After the lunch, the young wizards all went to take a nap, but Lin walked towards the defense against the dark arts professor's office where Lockhart was. Irina cast a disillusionment charm on herself and followed Lin closely. Professor Lockhart, are you there? Lin knocked on the door of the defense against the dark arts professor's office. Soon, the door opened, and standing inside was Lockhart, showing his white teeth. Mr. Owl, what can I do for you? Lockhart saw that the person who came was Lin, who had confronted him at the beginning of the school year. He subconsciously took a step back and then asked. Lin said lightly, I have something to ask you, may I come in? Hearing this, Lockhart thought that Lin had finally run into trouble and wanted to ask for his help. In line with the principle of fooling one fan, Lockhart once again showed his white teeth and said with a smile, of course, Mr. Owl. So, Lin walked into the defense against the dark arts professor's office, and after entering, he did not forget to close and lock the door of the office after Irina followed him in. Lin looked at the scene in the defense against the dark arts professor's office. The room was full of portraits of Lockhart, and the Lockharts in these portraits were more showy than each other. Seeing this scene, Lin couldn't help but frowned and showed a look of disgust. Once upon a time, he also came to this defense against the dark arts professor's office to study with Professor Green, a famous French alchemist. At that time, the defense against the dark arts professor's office was full of alchemical equipment and academic materials. But now, this office is still the same office, but the things inside have become extremely unfamiliar. In the 2 years since Professor Green left, Hogwarts Castle has never welcomed a qualified defense against the dark arts professor. It is true that every professor who comes to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry has the right to decorate his own office. However, as a professor, Lockhart decorated his office like a celebrity meeting, which simply tarnished the profession of defense against the dark arts professor. Chapter 148 I'll send you to St. Mungolis. Mr. O, I wonder if you have any questions for me? Seeing that Lin unlocked the door of the defense against the dark arts professor's office, Lockhart had an ominous premonition and asked. Lin En placed a book written by Lockhart, Wandering with Werewolves, on the table in front of Lockhart and said lightly, Professor, I saw from this book that you know a magic called the reconstruction spell, which can turn werewolves back into ordinary humans. Can you please show me this magic? I want to learn this magic. Hearing this, Lockhart's face froze. How could he know the reconstruction spell? The contents in the book were all what he got from other people's stories. Now that Lin En wanted him to show the reconstruction spell, how could he possibly perform it? Exclamation mark. Mr. O, the reconstruction spell is a profound magic. I don't think you need to learn it now. If there is no other problem, Mr. O, you can go back. Lockhart said with a forced smile. He just wanted Lin En to get out of his office. Lin En was unmoved. He said softly, you are right. I may not be good enough to learn this spell. But can you please show me this magic? At least let me have a thought. Lockhart frowned and said, this magic requires a wizard to pay a great price to perform. After all, this magic is to turn a werewolf back to a normal human being. There is no werewolf here. I don't need to waste that cost to release this magic. Hearing Lockhart's words, Lin En's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a playful smile. Really? But, Professor, you didn't write this in the book. What you said in the book is that you just waved your wand and the old werewolf turned back into an ordinary human being. The student just hopes that you can show this magic, but you refuse in every possible way. This kind of thing should not happen to a wizard like you, unless you don't know this magic at all. Lin En said softly, his tone full of certainty. Hearing this, Lockhart's eyes suddenly became more flustered. He said impatiently, this is impossible, Mr. All, you shouldn't speculate about your professor so maliciously. Lin sneered and said, whether it is malicious speculation or not, the facts will give the answer. I think the reason why you can't let the werewolves restore their human form is because the stories in this book are not your personal experiences at all. Could it be that the magic books you wrote are all made up by yourself? But the contents of these books are so real, they don't seem to be made up. Could it be that the experiences in these books are not yours at all, and you stole these experiences and made them your books? Lin's tone was indifferent, as if he was stating a fact. Although Lin had never read Lockhart's book, the information in the original book alone was enough for Lin to guess the authenticity of these books. Lockhart was speechless. He never thought that everything he had done would be exposed in front of Lin in just a few words. Lockhart looked at Lin viciously. Since you already know, I won't act anymore. So what? Mr. All, use your common sense. If people are not allowed to think that I did all those things, the sales of the book will be much worse. Readers will not be willing to read about the deeds of an ugly old American wizard, even though he saved a village from the scourge of werewolves. If his photo was put on the cover, it would be ugly. He has no taste in clothes. And the witch who expelled the Wanlun ghost, she has a hairy chin. I mean, think about it. Lockhart said angrily. He didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did. Lin sneered and asked, so, you stole the fruits of their victory and claimed their deeds as your own? Faced with Lin's questioning, Lockhart showed no remorse. Lockhart boasted, it's not as simple as you said. I have a lot of work to do. I have to track these people and ask them how they did those things. Then I have to cast a forgetfulness spell on them so that they will forget about it completely. If there is anything I'm proud of, it is my forgetfulness spell. Let me tell you, Mr. Owl, I have to work hard, not just signing books and taking photos of celebrities. Lin said lightly, you may not know that it is illegal to use the forgetfulness spell on wizards at will. This is enough to send you to Azkaban. Hearing this, Lockhart chuckled and said, who knows? As he said that, Lockhart raised his wand and pointed it at Lin. I'm sincerely sorry, Mr. Owl, I have to cast a forgetfulness spell on you. As long as you forget these things, no one can expose me, and my books can be sold forever. Lockhart's tone became cold, and a faint white light came out from the tip of his wand. Lockhart said with a sneer, say goodbye to your memory. Oblivion. However, before Lockhart could finish the spell, a purple beam as thick as a thumb suddenly flew out from the corner of the office and hit Lockhart's head hard. Lockhart was blown away by the purple beam, hit the wall of the office hard, and then slid down. When Lockhart hit the wall, Lin could even feel the whole office shaking. You are too cruel. Lin looked at the corner of the office helplessly. Lockhart was lying on the ground and almost turned into meat paste. At this time, Irina removed the disillusionment spell and appeared at the place where Lin was looking. She stuck out her tongue and said with a faint smile, who told him to attack you? Humph. Lin chuckled and shook his head and asked, did you record everything? Irina shook the two-sided mirror in front of Lin's eyes and said with a smile, everything was recorded. The reason why Irina sneaked into the defense against the dark arts professor's office was not to attack Lockhart in the end. After all, Lin alone had countless ways to kill Lockhart before Lockhart cast the spell. The real purpose of Irina's stealth entry into the defense against the dark arts professor's office was to use the recording and video recording function of the two-sided mirror to record everything. When Lin used various ways to trick Lockhart into telling her what he had done. That's good. Lin nodded. Leave it to me next. Lin glanced at a pile of panicked Lockhart portraits in the office. When he waved his wand, a ball of magic flame rose up and burned the portraits to ashes. Then, Lin looked at Lockhart and pointed his wand at Lockhart's head. "I've done you a favor by not sending you to Azkaban. Next, I'll send you to St. Mungo's." Blithely, Lin's cold voice sounded, and a flash of white light passed by. "Please give me rewards and monthly tickets." Chapter 149. You turned around and eloped with Lin En. "So, you're telling me that Lockhart became like this because the oblivion charm he cast on you was rebounded by your defensive all-chemical weapon, and the office that was burned to ashes was caused by the out-of-control magic fire you released when you resisted?" In the principal's office, Dumbledore looked at Lin with suspicion. Dumbledore didn't believe that Lin's magic fire would get out of control. After all, with Lin's extreme affinity for fire, even if the fire swept the entire office, as long as Lin wanted, the office would be intact. However, the video in the two-way mirror, given by Irina, stopped abruptly when Lockhart cast a spell on Lin, and nothing happened in the office afterwards. This made Dumbledore believe Lin's lies. Facing Dumbledore's doubts, Lin nodded without changing his expression, indicating that what he said was true. Well, since Lockhart is a fraud, he naturally cannot be a professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Dumbledore rubbed his brow and said helplessly. Dumbledore looked at Lockhart, who was not far away, with snot and saliva all over his face, and was still shouting Macaboca and Wabababoo, and couldn't help feeling a little tired. He had just dealt with the basilisk, and his own professor also got into trouble. Where can he go to seek justice? Exclamation mark. Dumbledore looked at Lin and Irina, who looked honest in front of him, and said, "It seems that I have to draft a recruitment advertisement and put it in the Daily Prophet. We need a new professor to teach the defense against the dark arts course. My god, the professors of this course are consumed so quickly, aren't they?" Lin didn't say anything. He shrugged. "Why are the professors of this course consumed so quickly? Don't you have any idea?" Exclamation mark. Any good professor would not want to work here for a second year, and those who want to keep working here are no good. Ahem. Except for a certain big bat. Lin En made up in his mind. Since there is nothing else, Irina and I will go back first. After all, the final exam will be in 2 days, and we have to review it well. Lin En took Irina's little hand, and after saying this, he walked out of the principal's office without looking back. After Lockhart's matter was over, they had to start preparing for the next final exam. Although their grades were very good, even to the point where they didn't need to review, they still had to cram for the history of magic, a rote course that they had never listened to seriously. It's better to sharpen your spear before the battle, isn't it? Exclamation mark. What's more, with their temporary memory, they can get a no score that represents excellence. I need a room to study in. Lin En and Irina walked back and forth 3 times outside the room of requirement with the history of magic textbook in their arms. After opening the wooden door of the room of requirement, Lin En and Irina came to a study room. In fact, Lin En originally planned to review in the dormitory by himself, but after Irina's recent experience, she got used to going with him, so she asked him to come to the room of requirement to review together. In this regard, Lin En naturally agreed happily. I always cram at the last minute. In the study room, Irina hummed a song while flipping through the history of magic textbook in her hand. Lin En said helplessly, "Irina, can you really read while singing?" Irina retorted unconvincedly, "If I remember correctly, you were also a liberal arts student in your previous life, right? The entire history of magic is just that little bit. How can it be compared with those history books we used to recite? It's not difficult at all." Lin En thought about it and felt that it was true. The history of magic is not like those history books, where everything about politics, economy, and culture must be written in detail. Rather than saying that the history of magic is a complete history book, it is better to say that the history of magic is a historical chronicle. Only important events such as the Goblin Rebellion and the Wizarding World War will be recorded in the history of magic. As for who the Minister of Magic of a certain country was in a certain era, that is not the scope of study for the little wizards. Soon, the annual final exams began. Since the basilisk was solved by Lin and Irina more than 3 weeks ago, Hogwarts did not cancel the exams as in the original book, but all exams were carried out normally. This made many little wizards wail everywhere. In the tense and depressing atmosphere, the exam week passed, and the coming is a carnival of the little wizards. Before the end of year dinner, they still have several days to revel in the castle. During these days, Lin and Irina went to Hogsmeade Village to hang out and drink tea almost every day. And in the days when they didn't go, it was either because Lin got a brand new alchemical material in Hogsmeade Village and needed to experiment in the dormitory, or Harry and his friends dragged Irina to play in the Gryffindor common room. There is always an end to the carnival, and the year-end dinner has arrived. The little wizards of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry have all come to the hall, and the professors have already taken their places in the teachers' seats. Dumbledore stood up and announced the scores of each college, with Slytherin ranking first, Ravenclaw ranking second, Gryffindor ranking third, and Hufflepuff ranking fourth. In this year, Harry and his friends did not lose hundreds of points at once like last year. With the unremitting efforts of Irina and Hermione, Gryffindor's original score finally surpassed the Hufflepuff Badgers, who were always playing badly. Next, we have some things to count in this. Dumbledore did not immediately announce the ownership of the College Cup, but continued. In this way, in front of all the students, Dumbledore added 200 points to each of Lin and Irina. Although adding points to both parties at the same time is equivalent to not adding points, and Gryffindor cannot surpass Slytherin, but at least Gryffindor's ranking has climbed up one more place, surpassing the Ravenclaw Eagles and becoming the second. At the same time, the little wizards who only knew that the basilisk had been eliminated, but did not understand the ins and outs of the matter, also learned about the heroic deeds of Lin and Irina, who joined forces to kill the basilisk. As a result, these upright little wizards all regarded Lin and Irina as the patron saints of Hogwarts. This made Lin and Irina the most popular in the castle for a while, and their popularity in the castle even exceeded that of Harry, who was called the savior. Of course, Lin and Irina themselves were so embarrassed that they wanted to save a bedroom and one living room. In addition, Harry also complained to Irina afterwards, saying that you clearly agreed to take me to find the secret room, but you turned around and eloped with Lin. This made Irina blush. Chapter 150. I'm really stupid, really, I just know. The day after the year-end dinner, the young wizards took the Hogwarts Express back to King's Cross Station. On the night of the year-end dinner, the young wizards were packing their luggage, and Irina was no exception. With the backpack with the traceless extension spell given to her by Lin, Irina only took more than 10 minutes to pack all the things to take home. Then, she turned her eyes to Hermione, who was still packing. Since Lockhart's affair was exposed, Hermione has been in a low mood. She never thought that the idol she once admired the most was actually a charlatan who deceived the world and stole his reputation, and she had defended this charlatan for almost a whole school year. Just as Irina thought in her heart at the beginning of the school year, Lockhart's collapse made Hermione depressed. These days, Hermione always felt like a bad guy who helped the evil and should be punished. Even in the final exam that just ended, Hermione was worried about this matter and did not perform well. Hermione, don't be unhappy. Think about something happy. We are going home tomorrow, right? Irina came over and comforted Hermione while helping her pack up. Hermione looked at her with red eyes. I'm so stupid, really. I only knew that Lockhart was a famous wizard, but I didn't realize that he was actually a charlatan. Even Harry and Ron saw that something was wrong with Lockhart. Hearing this series of familiar quotes, Irina couldn't help but twitch her mouth. Irina hugged Hermione's head and said helplessly, please, you are Hermione. You shouldn't make yourself unhappy for so long for a liar. People always make mistakes. After Irina's words to coax the child, Hermione finally felt better. This made Irina exclaim in her heart that Hermione was obviously a teenager, but she was still a child. One night passed quickly. In the morning of the next day, after everyone enjoyed breakfast in the hall, they began to line up in an orderly manner to board the Hogwarts Express. Before getting on the train, all the young wizards received a notice from the Ministry of Magic, just like last year, which required young wizards not to perform magic outside of school. In this notice, there was also a trace. Of course, most of these traces were left in the notice and collected back. Only those first year wizards who did not have traces in their wands would have the traces in the notices they received leave the notices and attach to their wands. But Irina was an exception. She got a brand new wand last summer, so there was no trace in her wand. Therefore, the traces in the notice she received flew out again and attached to her ice crystal wood wand. Give it to you. After getting on the Hogwarts Express, Lin En took Irina's ice crystal wood wand from her. The two found an empty carriage and sat face to face, and Lin En placed the ice crystal wood wand on the table between them. Lin En waved his wand, and golden threads condensed in the air and turned into special alchemical runes. These special alchemical runes complemented each other, and a thin golden thread connected them all together. As Lin En pressed the wand in his hand slightly downward, the formed alchemical array quickly fell and was imprinted on the surface of the ice crystal wood wand. Lin En's lips and teeth moved slightly, and strange syllables came out of his mouth. A golden light flashed by, and the alchemical array was actually immersed in the ice crystal wood wand, no longer visible to outsiders. Okay, I've blocked the traces in the wand for you, and you can use magic at will, Lin En said happily, and he put the ice crystal wood wand back into Irina's hand. Irina waved her wand happily, and she could feel that the magic power that suddenly appeared like a shackle when she received the notice disappeared. Irina smiled and said, "It's good to have a friend who knows alchemy." Just as the two began to chat, two red-haired figures walked into the carriage. "We are sorry to interrupt your date, but we have something to tell you." The voices echoed from the door of the carriage. Lin and Irina looked over and found that the people who came were the We're Light Twins. "What date? We are just chatting normally, okay?" Irina complained. Lin looked at the two of them and asked with a chuckle, "Fred, George, have you finished reading the alchemy books I gave you last month?" Hearing this, Fred and George's faces suddenly turned bitter. Fred complained, "When you gave it to us, you didn't tell me that we borrowed it from the restricted area." That's right, when we found the paper with the return date in the book, there was only 1 day left before the book was returned. We were almost dumbfounded. George nodded vigorously. Fred wailed, "Poor us, it took us a whole night." George also wailed, "A lamp, a pen, a miracle." Seeing the two of them playing tricks here, Lin couldn't help laughing. Lin smiled and asked, "It seems that you have copied it all down. So, do you understand it?" Fred scratched his head and said, "I can understand it, but it's too difficult to put it into practice. It actually requires us to do it without the wand." The alchemy book that Lin gave to the We're Light Twins a month ago recorded a special technique on how to hide the alchemy array engraved on the surface of an object and make it sink into the interior of the object. This method is very simple and does not require a wand. However, corresponding to the simplicity of use, it is difficult to learn it. Although Fred and George have thoroughly understood the theory of this special technique, they have never succeeded in putting it into practice. After all, this method is similar to the wizard's wandless casting. Even if Fred and George's magic power has reached the standard of wandless casting, it is still very difficult for them to learn this special technique without the corresponding experience. On the other hand, Lin learned wandless casting first, before learning this special technique, which allowed him to master this special technique almost at the first glance. Lin waved her hand and said, "So I suggested that you practice wandless casting first." "Who told you not to listen?" George cried. "Please, we can't even cast silently. How can we learn wandless casting?" Fred said, "We spent a year learning silent casting, but wandless casting is still too difficult. We tried for a long time, but still had no clue, so we temporarily gave up wandless casting and turned to study alchemy. Please give me rewards and monthly tickets." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.